I'd rather die alone than date a cripple. Those words, spat across a crowded Christmas Eve cafe, shattered more than one woman's heart. They ignited a war she never saw coming. What began as public humiliation at a cafe table would end in a courtroom battle for everything she loved. But between that devastating moment and her final stand, a stranger would kneel beside her wheelchair, a past she'd buried would claw its way back, and a 5-year-old girl would ask the question that changes everything. Mommy, is something wrong with us? Stay until the end to see how the worst night of her life became her greatest victory. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The cafe smelled like cinnamon and broken dreams. Alyssa Monroe had arrived 20 minutes early, which now felt like the cruelest form of self-torture. 20 minutes of watching couples share desserts, of hearing laughter that seemed to mock the knot in her stomach, of second-guessing everything about this ridiculous idea. The red scarf she'd chosen with such care now felt like a noose around her neck. Her makeup, applied with trembling hands in the bathroom mirror while Emma watched cartoons, suddenly seemed desperate, pathetic even. Why did I think this would work? She glanced down at Emma, who sat beside her in the booth, small legs swinging beneath the table, completely absorbed in coloring a paper placemat with crayons the waitress had brought. 5 years old and already her whole world. Emma's blonde curls caught the soft glow of the Christmas lights strung across the cafe windows, and for a moment, Alyssa felt the familiar surge of fierce love that made everything else fade. Mommy, look! Emma held up her drawing, a lopsided Christmas tree covered in purple ornaments. It's magic! It's beautiful, baby. Alyssa's voice came out softer than intended, tight with the emotion she was trying to suppress. The dating app had seemed like such a good idea 3 weeks ago. Sarah, her physical therapist and closest friend, had practically forced her to download it. You're 28, not dead, Sarah had said, her tone brooking no argument. One date, just try, for yourself, not for anyone else. But Alyssa knew the truth. This wasn't just about herself. This was about proving something to the world, to her mother who looked at her with such careful pity, to every doctor who spoke in gentle tones about adjusting expectations, and most terrifyingly, to that voice in her own head that whispered she was broken beyond repair. The accident had been 3 years ago. A drunk driver, a rainy night, a split second that divided her life into before and after. Before, she'd been a dancer. After, she was the woman in the wheelchair, the single mother abandoned by her boyfriend the moment the doctor used the word permanent, the charity case who inspired uncomfortable sympathy wherever she went. Mark had left while she was still in the hospital, didn't even have the courage to do it in person, just a text message that she'd read through tears while Emma slept in a fold-out chair beside her bed. I can't do this. I'm sorry. I'm not strong enough. As if she'd had a choice about being strong. As if strength was optional when you had a 2-year-old daughter counting on you. The cafe door chimed. Alyssa's breath caught. A man walked in. Tall, dark hair, wearing a gray peacoat that matched the one described in his profile. Derek, 32, worked in finance, enjoyed hiking and meaningful conversations. His photos had shown kind eyes and an easy smile. Their messages over the past week had been nice. Careful, but nice. She told him about Emma, about the wheelchair. He'd said it didn't matter. He'd said he was looking forward to meeting her. Please let that be true. Derek's eyes scanned the cafe, and Alyssa raised her hand slightly, a small wave that felt simultaneously hopeful and utterly foolish. For a moment, just a fraction of a second, she thought she saw his expression shift. Something cold flickered across his features before he schooled them back into neutrality. He walked toward her table. Alyssa felt Emma stop coloring, felt her daughter's curious eyes turn toward the approaching stranger. She forced herself to smile, to sit up straighter, to pretend the wheelchair was just furniture and not the elephant in every room she ever entered. Alyssa? Derek stopped 3 feet from the table, not sitting, not even unbuttoning his coat. Hi. Yes, it's so nice to finally meet you. She hated how bright her voice sounded, how desperate. This is my daughter, Emma. Emma, can you say hi? Hi. Emma waved enthusiastically, oblivious to the tension crackling in the air. Derek didn't acknowledge her. His gaze stayed fixed on Alyssa, traveling deliberately from her face down to the wheelchair, then back up again. The kindness she'd seen in his photos was nowhere to be found. Instead, his mouth twisted into something ugly, something that made Alyssa's blood run cold. "You know what?" Derek's voice carried across the cafe, loud enough that nearby conversations faltered. "I don't know what game you're playing, but I'm not interested." The words hit like a physical blow. Alyssa felt the heat drain from her face. I don't understand. I told you." "Yeah, you told me." Derek laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. "You said you had mobility issues. That's quite a way to describe being in a wheelchair, don't you think? A little misleading?" "I wasn't trying to mislead anyone." Alyssa's hands gripped the armrests of her chair, knuckles white. Around them, she could feel eyes turning, conversations stopping. The attention felt like spotlights, burning and inescapable. "I was completely honest about my situation." "Honest?" Derek shook his head, and Alyssa caught the whisper of alcohol on his breath as he leaned closer. He'd been drinking before he even arrived. "You post photos from 5 years ago, you use vague language, and you expect what? That I'd show up and suddenly not care? That I'd be so charmed by your personality I wouldn't notice?" "Mommy?" Emma's voice was small, uncertain. The crayons had stopped moving. "It's okay, sweetie." But it wasn't okay. Nothing about this was okay. Alyssa could feel tears pressing behind her eyes, the familiar burn of humiliation that she'd worked so hard to leave behind. "Derek, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding." He reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet. The gesture was slow, deliberate, cruel. He extracted 2 $20 bills and dropped them on the table like they were contaminated. They fluttered down between the crayons and Emma's drawing. "For your trouble, buy the kid something nice." The cafe had gone almost silent. Christmas music still played from overhead speakers, "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas," but it felt obscene against what was happening. Alyssa couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. The money sat there between them, a statement more vicious than any insult. "I don't want your money." Her voice came out as a whisper. "Consider it charity, then." Derek was already turning away. "Do yourself a favor. Stay off the dating apps. Nobody wants—" He gestured vaguely at her wheelchair, his lip curling. "Nobody wants damaged goods. It's just pathetic." He walked away. The door chimed again as he left, letting in a blast of cold December air that made the Christmas lights sway on their strings. And Alyssa sat frozen, $40 in cash on the table in front of her, like evidence of her own worthlessness. Emma staring up at her with eyes too knowing for 5 years old, and at least 20 strangers having witnessed her complete and utter humiliation. "Mommy?" Emma's voice cracked, and that sound, that tiny break in her daughter's voice, shattered something in Alyssa's chest. "Is something wrong with us?" 4 words, 4 simple words that destroyed her, because Emma didn't ask, "What's wrong with him?" or "Why was he mean?" She asked, "What's wrong with us?" as if she'd already internalized that they were the problem, as if at 5 years old she'd already learned that they were less than, other than wrong somehow in the world's eyes. "No, baby." Alyssa reached for Emma's hand, held it tight even as her own was shaking. "Nothing is wrong with us, nothing at all." But the lie tasted like ash in her mouth. She couldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of all these people who'd just watched her be discarded like garbage. Not in front of Emma, who was watching her with those too perceptive eyes, waiting to see how Mommy would react, learning what this moment meant. Alyssa grabbed the $40 with numb fingers, crumpled them, and shoved them into her purse. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely manage the zipper. She needed to leave. Needed to get Emma out of here. Needed to get home where she could fall apart in private, where she could scream or cry or just sit in the dark and hate herself for being stupid enough to think, "Excuse me." A man's voice, quiet but firm. Alyssa looked up through the blur of unshed tears to find a stranger standing beside their table. He was tall, over 6 feet, with dark brown hair and eyes that held something Alyssa couldn't quite name. Not pity. Thank God, not pity. Something else. Something that looked almost like anger, but not at her. "I'm sorry to interrupt," he continued, his voice steady and somehow gentle despite the steel underneath it. "But I just watched what happened, and I need to ask you something." Alyssa couldn't speak, could only stare at this man who'd materialized out of her nightmare like some kind of hallucination. That man who just left? Did you know him? She shook her head mutely. The stranger's jaw tightened. Good. Then you won't mind if I have a word with him. Before Alyssa could respond, before she could process what was happening, the man turned and walked toward the door with purposeful strides. He didn't run, didn't rush, just moved with the calm certainty of someone who knew exactly what he was going to do. The cafe door chimed as he stepped outside. Alyssa sat frozen, Emma's hand still clutched in hers, as the murmur of conversation slowly resumed around them. But she could feel the glances, the whispers. The waitress approached with careful sympathy that made Alyssa want to scream. Can I get you anything, honey? Some coffee? Hot chocolate for the little one? We're fine. The words came out sharper than Alyssa intended. Sorry, We're fine. Thank you. The waitress retreated and Alyssa focused on Emma, on smoothing her daughter's hair, on trying to look normal and okay, and like her world hadn't just collapsed for the 100th time since the accident. Through the window, she could see shapes moving in the parking lot. The stranger, tall and solid in his dark jacket, standing very close to Derek, who seemed to be backing away. Alyssa couldn't hear what was being said, but she could see Derek's face even in the dim light, could see fear replacing his earlier contempt. Good. The thought surprised her with its viciousness. But yes, good. Let him be afraid. Let him feel even a fraction of what he'd made her feel. The confrontation lasted less than 2 minutes. Derek got into his car, a sleek BMW that probably cost more than Alyssa made in a year, and drove away too fast, tires squealing slightly on the cold pavement. The stranger stood there for a moment longer, hands in his pockets, watching the car disappear. Then he turned and walked back toward the cafe. Alyssa's heart hammered against her ribs. She didn't know what to expect, didn't know if this man was going to make things better or worse, if he was going to treat her like a victim who needed saving or... The door chimed. He walked back in, and this time she noticed details she'd missed before. He was younger than she'd first thought, mid-30s maybe. He wore jeans and a dark green sweater under his jacket, nothing fancy, but he carried himself with a quiet confidence that had nothing to do with clothing. There was a wedding ring on his left hand, she noticed. Of course. The good ones were always taken. He walked back to her table and did something that shocked her into stillness. He knelt, not crouched, not bent down. He actually lowered himself to one knee beside her wheelchair so that his eyes were level with hers. The gesture was so unexpected, so fundamentally different from every other interaction she'd had since the accident, that for a moment Alyssa forgot how to breathe. Hi, he said simply. My name is Lucas. I'm sorry for just running off like that, but I needed to make sure he understood something. Understood what? Alyssa's voice was barely above a whisper. That the way he treated you was completely unacceptable, and if I ever see him in this cafe again, we'll have a much longer conversation. Lucas's expression was calm, almost gentle, but there was steel underneath. Then his features softened completely as he turned to Emma. And you must be the artist. That's an incredible Christmas tree. Emma, who'd been silent since Derek left, lit up. It has magic ornaments. They can grant wishes. Magic ornaments? That's the best kind. Lucas smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes, and Alyssa felt something crack in her chest. What would you wish for? A puppy, Emma said immediately, and for Mommy to smile more. She used to smile all the time before I was born, but now she only smiles sometimes. The innocence of it, the casual way Emma revealed truths that Alyssa tried so hard to hide, made tears well up again. Alyssa blinked them back furiously, but Lucas had already seen. His expression shifted, not to pity, but to understanding, like he knew something about hiding pain behind smiles. Those are good wishes, Lucas said to Emma. Then he looked back at Alyssa. I know this is incredibly forward, and you have every right to tell me to go away, but my son and I were having dinner over there. He gestured to a booth across the cafe where a boy of about 7 sat watching them with open curiosity. And we wondered if you and your daughter would like to join us. No pressure, no expectations, just, it's Christmas Eve, and I think maybe we could all use some company. Alyssa stared at him. This stranger who'd defended her, who'd confronted Derek, who was now kneeling beside her wheelchair like it was the most natural thing in the world and asking her to join him for dinner. Every instinct she'd developed since the accident screamed at her to say no, to protect herself, to not trust kindness because it always came with conditions or pity or expectations she couldn't meet. But Emma was looking at her hopefully, and Lucas was still kneeling there with patient eyes that didn't make her feel like a charity case. And God, she was so tired of being afraid. "We've already eaten," Alyssa heard herself say, and watched Lucas's face start to fall before she continued. "But we haven't had dessert yet. Emma loves hot chocolate." The smile that spread across Lucas's face was like sunrise. Ben, too. He insists on extra marshmallows and then fishes them all out to eat them separately. Drives me crazy. Emma does the exact same thing. Alyssa felt herself smiling despite everything, despite the tears still threatening, despite the humiliation that sat like a stone in her chest. Well then, Lucas stood and offered his hand, not to help her, just a gesture of, what, partnership? Friendship? Alyssa didn't know, but she took it, felt the warmth and steadiness of his grip for just a moment before he released her. Shall we relocate? Fair warning, though, Ben's going to have approximately 8 million questions. He's in what his teacher calls the curious phase. As opposed to what phase? Alyssa maneuvered her wheelchair away from the table, muscle memory making the movement smooth despite her shaking hands. The quiet phase, which lasted about 12 seconds when he was 2 years old. Emma giggled, gathering her crayons carefully. I ask lots of questions, too. Mommy says I'm inquisitive. That's a very big word, Lucas said, clearly impressed. Mommy teaches me big words. She's the smartest person I know. Alyssa's throat tightened. Emma said it with such absolute certainty, such fierce pride, that for a moment Alyssa forgot about Derek, about the $40 of pity money still crumpled in her purse, about every terrible thing this night had been. They made their way across the cafe to Lucas's booth. The boy, Ben, watched their approach with wide brown eyes that matched his father's. He had the kind of earnest, open face that suggested he hadn't yet learned to hide his emotions, and Alyssa found herself grateful for that. She was so tired of people's carefully controlled expressions, the way they schooled their features into acceptable neutrality around her. Ben, this is Alyssa and Emma. They're going to join us for hot chocolate. Lucas slid back into the booth, and Alyssa positioned her wheelchair at the end of the table where she could see everyone. Emma climbed into the booth beside Ben with the fearlessness of 5-year-olds everywhere. Hi, Ben said immediately. Did you really get to tell off that mean guy, Dad? Ben, Lucas's tone held gentle warning. What? He was mean. Everyone saw it. Ben turned to Alyssa with the blunt honesty of childhood. That man was really rude to you. Dad went outside and I think he yelled at him. I didn't yell, Lucas corrected. I spoke very firmly. Same thing, Ben said dismissively, then focused on Emma with laser intensity. Do you like Lego? I don't know. I've never had any. Ben's expression suggested Emma had just admitted to never breathing air. You've never had Lego? Dad, can we get Emma Lego for Christmas? We just met them approximately 90 seconds ago, buddy. So? You always say we should help people. Emma needs Lego. That's helping. Despite everything, Alyssa laughed. It burst out of her unexpectedly, a real laugh that came from somewhere genuine, and the sound of it seemed to surprise even her. Lucas caught her eye and smiled like they were sharing a secret. The waitress appeared, a different one this time, younger, who looked at their newly configured table with open curiosity but mercifully no judgment. What can I get you, folks? Hot chocolate for everyone, Lucas said. Extra marshmallows, and maybe some of those Christmas cookies you have up front. Coming right up. As the waitress left, Alyssa found herself studying Lucas more carefully. The wedding ring she'd noticed earlier, but no wife. He'd said, my son and I, not we. And there was something in the way he carried himself, a kind of self-sufficiency that suggested he was used to handling things alone. So, Lucas said, his tone deliberately light, I have to admit I noticed your daughter's very impressive artistic skills. Emma, do you always use purple for Christmas trees? Purple is magic, Emma explained with the patient tone of someone speaking to a very slow adult. Green is just normal, but magic things should be special colors. That's actually excellent logic, Lucas said seriously. Ben, why have we been making normal green trees all these years? Because you said we had to use realistic colors, Ben reminded him. Well, I was clearly wrong. Your rules are better, Emma. Alyssa watched this exchange with something warming in her chest, something she was afraid to name because naming it made it real, and real things could be taken away. But sitting here, listening to Emma laugh, seeing her daughter lean close to Ben as they started collaborating on a drawing, watching Lucas treat her child with genuine interest rather than condescending sweetness, it felt like stepping into sunshine after years in shadow. The hot chocolate arrived in oversized mugs topped with mountains of whipped cream and marshmallows. Emma's eyes went wide with delight, and even Alyssa had to admit it looked more like dessert than a drink. Okay, Ben announced. Here's what you do. You take all the marshmallows out first, eat half of them, then put the other half back in so they get melty. That's a very specific system, Alyssa observed. He spent years perfecting it, Lucas said dryly. I've learned not to question the process. Emma immediately began following Ben's instructions, carefully fishing marshmallows out of her mug with a spoon. The two children bent their heads together, completely absorbed in the serious business of hot chocolate engineering. In the relative quiet, Lucas turned to Alyssa. His expression had shifted to something more serious, more careful. I want to apologize again for inserting myself into your evening. I know you didn't ask for anyone to play hero, and I hope I didn't make things worse. You didn't make things worse. Alyssa wrapped her hands around her mug, grateful for the warmth. I'm not usually the kind of person who needs rescuing. I didn't think you were. Lucas's voice was steady, certain. What I saw wasn't someone who needed rescuing. What I saw was someone dealing with an incredibly difficult situation with a lot more grace than that asshole deserved. The casual curse word, combined with the complete lack of pity in his tone, startled a laugh out of Alyssa. I'm not sure grace is how I'd describe freezing like a deer in headlights. You protected your daughter. You kept your composure in front of her when I'm guessing you wanted to do about 15 different things, none of them particularly graceful. That takes strength. Lucas paused, seeming to choose his next words carefully. Can I ask you something? Alyssa's stomach tightened. Here it came. The questions, the curiosity, the inevitable moment when people wanted to know the tragic backstory of the woman in the wheelchair. Sure. Was that really a blind date, your first time meeting him? Yeah. Alyssa stared into her hot chocolate. We'd been talking for about a week on a dating app. I told him about... She gestured at her wheelchair. About this. He said it wasn't a problem. Guess he changed his mind when it became real. Lucas's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping in his cheek. He's an idiot. Or I'm just not what people are looking for. No. The word came out sharp enough that Alyssa looked up, startled. Lucas's eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. No, don't do that. Don't let him or anyone else make you believe that your worth is defined by their inability to see it. You don't even know me. The words came out as a whisper. I know enough. Lucas's voice softened but lost none of its conviction. I know you're raising a smart, kind, creative daughter who clearly adores you. I know you had the courage to show up for yourself tonight even though it must have been terrifying. I know you're sitting here having hot chocolate with strangers instead of going home to cry, which is probably what I would have done in your position. He paused. And I know that guy was so far beneath you that he's not even worth the mental energy you're spending on him. Alyssa felt tears pressing behind her eyes again, but these were different from the ones she'd fought earlier. These weren't tears of humiliation or pain. These were something else, something she couldn't quite name. Thank you, she managed. Don't thank me for telling the truth. Lucas took a sip of his hot chocolate, then grimaced. Though I should maybe thank you for not judging me for confronting him. My sister keeps telling me I have a white knight complex and need to let people fight their own battles. Does she? Alyssa found herself smiling despite the tears still threatening. Constantly. She says one day I'm going to insert myself into a situation that's none of my business and get punched in the face. Lucas grinned, and the expression transformed his whole face, made him look younger and somehow more real. But in my defense, I've made it to 34 without that happening, so my instincts can't be completely terrible. 34. I would have guessed younger. You're kind. Most people say the gray hair makes me look older. Lucas ran a hand through his hair self-consciously, and Alyssa noticed for the first time the threads of silver at his temples. It suits you, she heard herself say, then felt heat creep up her neck. Was she flirting? God, she didn't even remember how to flirt anymore. And with a married man, no less. Dad, Emma doesn't know any of the Christmas songs. Ben's voice broke into her spiraling thoughts. Can we teach her Jingle Bells? I know Jingle Bells, Emma protested. Mommy sings it all the time. But do you know the Batman version? Ben asked with the gravity of someone discussing state secrets. Emma's eyes went wide. There's a Batman version? Lucas caught Alyssa's eye, his expression resigned. This is what I've been dealing with since Thanksgiving. Apparently someone at school taught him alternative lyrics to every Christmas carol, and now that's all he wants to sing. Jingle bells, Batman smells, Robin laid an egg, Ben sang enthusiastically, and Emma dissolved into giggles. See? Ben looked triumphant. It's way better than the regular version. That is a matter of opinion, Lucas said, but he was smiling. Alyssa watched Emma laugh with Ben, watched her daughter be just a kid with another kid, no weight of worry or premature understanding shadowing her joy. This was what she'd wanted for Emma: normalcy, childhood, moments where being Alyssa Monroe's daughter didn't mean being the responsible one, the understanding one, the one who had to grow up too fast because mommy needed help. She doesn't get to do this much, Alyssa said quietly, barely aware she was speaking aloud. Just be silly with another kid. We're not around a lot of other families. Lucas's expression shifted to something understanding. It's hard to meet people when you're a single parent. Everyone assumes you're either looking for a replacement spouse or that you're trying to foist your kid off on them. There's not a lot of middle ground for just being friends. You're a single parent too? The question slipped out before Alyssa could stop it, before she could remind herself it was none of her business. Widower. Lucas's voice was steady, but Alyssa heard the weight behind it. Ben's mom died when he was 3. Cancer. I'm so sorry. The words felt inadequate, useless, but Lucas shook his head. Don't be. Thank you, but I've made my peace with it. Mostly. He paused, seeming to wrestle with whether to continue. It's been 4 years and I'm okay. Ben's okay. We have good days and hard days, but we have more good ones than hard ones now. There was something in his voice, some echo of her own experience, that made Alyssa brave. Emma's father left when I had my accident. He texted me in the hospital to tell me he couldn't handle it. Lucas's eyes darkened. He texted you while you were in the hospital? Classy, right? Alyssa tried for a light tone and didn't quite manage it. Emma was 2. She doesn't really remember him, which is probably for the best. What an absolute... Lucas glanced at the kids, lowered his voice. What a coward. Yeah. Alyssa was surprised by how easy it was to say, how little it hurt to talk about with Lucas. Maybe because he understood loss in a way most people didn't. Maybe because he was looking at her like she was a person, not a tragedy. But we're okay. More than okay. We have each other, and that's enough. Is it? Lucas asked gently. The question should have felt invasive, presumptuous. Instead, it felt like someone finally asking what she'd been too afraid to wonder herself. It has to be, Alyssa said finally. Does it? Lucas held her gaze. Alyssa, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to really hear it. You're allowed to want more than just survival. You're allowed to want companionship and support, and someone who sees you, really sees you. Wanting those things doesn't mean you're not enough for Emma. It means you're human. The tears came then, silent and unstoppable, sliding down Alyssa's cheeks despite her best efforts. She wiped at them quickly, embarrassed, but Lucas didn't look away. Didn't pretend not to notice. Just handed her a napkin and waited. I'm sorry, Alyssa managed. I don't usually fall apart in front of strangers. We're not strangers anymore, Lucas said simply. We're 2 people who've had hot chocolate together and whose kids are currently planning what sounds like a very elaborate heist involving Lego and Batman. He nodded toward where Ben and Emma were huddled together, whispering conspiratorially. Plus, I've seen you at your worst tonight, which means anything from here is an improvement. It was such a ridiculous thing to say that Alyssa laughed through her tears, a wet, messy sound that should have been mortifying but somehow wasn't. That's a terrible way to make someone feel better. Is it working, though? Unfortunately, yes. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, just watching their children. Emma was showing Ben her magic Christmas tree drawing, explaining in great detail about the wish-granting ornaments. Ben listened with rapt attention, asking questions that Emma answered with complete seriousness. "They're good together," Lucas observed. "Yeah." Alyssa felt something warm unfurling in her chest. "They really are." Ben doesn't make friends easily. He's a little intense for most kids his age, asks too many questions, cares too much about things like whether Batman could actually defeat Superman in a fair fight. Lucas smiled, but there was something sad underneath it. His mom was the same way, passionate about everything. "She sounds wonderful." She was. Lucas's voice was soft, distant. "Sometimes I worry that Ben doesn't remember her well enough. He was so young when she died. But then he'll do something, make this specific face when he's thinking really hard or get stubborn about the weirdest things. And I see her completely." Alyssa understood that fear intimately, the fear that Emma would forget, that time would erase the things that mattered. But in Emma's case, what was she forgetting? A father who'd abandoned them? A mother who used to dance? "Emma doesn't remember me before the accident," Alyssa found herself saying. "Sometimes I wonder if that's better or worse. She doesn't know that I used to be different, used to be able to do things." "You can still do things." Lucas's response was immediate, firm. "Different things maybe, but that doesn't make them less valuable. Try telling that to everyone who looks at me and only sees what I can't do anymore. Then they're idiots who aren't worth your time." Lucas leaned forward slightly. "Alyssa, can I tell you what I saw tonight? Not when that asshole was being terrible, but after. When you held your daughter's hand and told her nothing was wrong with you. When you made the choice to stay instead of running away. When you sat down with two complete strangers because your little girl was excited about hot chocolate. I saw strength. I saw grace under pressure. I saw a really good mom doing her absolute best in an impossible situation." "You saw all that in 20 minutes? "Yeah," Lucas smiled. "I did." The moment stretched between them, something fragile and new that Alyssa was afraid to name. She was saved from having to respond by Emma tugging on her sleeve. "Mommy, Ben invited us to his house to play Lego. Can we go? Please, please, please." Alyssa felt panic flutter in her chest. "Emma, sweetheart, we can't just—" "Not tonight, buddy," Lucas intervened smoothly. "It's late and it's Christmas Eve. But maybe—" He looked at Alyssa, and she saw the question in his eyes, the uncertainty that matched her own. "Maybe we could exchange numbers? Set up a play date after the holidays?" It was such a normal thing, such an ordinary parental interaction, exchanging numbers, planning play dates. But for Alyssa, it felt monumental. It had been so long since she'd made a new friend, since she'd allowed herself to reach toward connection instead of pulling away. "I'd like that," she heard herself say. Lucas's smile was like sunshine breaking through clouds. "Yeah?" "Yeah." Alyssa pulled out her phone with hands that only trembled slightly. "Fair warning, though. Emma will probably have been completely corrupted by purple Christmas trees within one play date." "I think Ben could use a little corruption." Lucas added her number to his contacts, then sent her a quick text so she'd have his. "There. Now we're officially in each other's phones. No backing out." Was I likely to back out? "I don't know, were you?" Lucas's tone was light, but his eyes were serious. Alyssa thought about it, about all the ways she could retreat, could protect herself, could use this night as further evidence that she should just give up on anything beyond her small, safe life with Emma. But looking at Lucas, at Ben and Emma, already making plans for their next adventure, at this unexpected moment of connection on what was supposed to be the worst night of her life. "No," she said firmly. "I wasn't going to back out." "Good." Lucas glanced at his watch and grimaced. "As much as I hate to say it, Ben and I should probably head out. We have a Christmas Eve tradition of watching the Muppet Christmas Carol before bed, and if we're late, I'll never hear the end of it." "That's a good tradition," Alyssa said. "We watch the Polar Express. Emma insists on hot chocolate during it, even though we've usually already had some." Excellent taste in both movies and beverages. Lucas started helping Ben gather his things. I meant what I said about the play date, by the way. I'll text you this week. I'll be waiting. The words came out more vulnerable than Alyssa intended, but Lucas's expression softened. Good. They made their way to the cafe exit together, the kids chattering excitedly about all the things they'd do at their future playdate. Outside, the night had turned colder, the sky clear and star-filled above the glowing Christmas lights that decorated the shopping center. "Merry Christmas, Alyssa," Lucas said, and the way he said her name, like it mattered, like she mattered, made something in her chest crack open. "Merry Christmas, Lucas." She watched them walk to their car, Ben holding his father's hand and turning back to wave enthusiastically at Emma. Emma waved back just as enthusiastically, practically bouncing in excitement. "Mommy, I made a friend!" Emma's voice was filled with joy. "And he's going to show me Lego, and we're going to build a purple castle." "That sounds amazing, baby." Alyssa maneuvered her wheelchair toward their own car, her mind still spinning from everything that had happened in the past hour. As she loaded Emma into her car seat, as she collapsed her wheelchair and wrestled it into the trunk with practiced efficiency. As she sat in the driver's seat and stared at the cafe where this impossible night had unfolded, Alyssa felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. It was terrifying and fragile and probably stupid, but it was there. A tiny flame in the darkness, refusing to be extinguished. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number, except it wasn't unknown anymore. Lucas. "Made it home safely. Ben wanted me to tell you that Emma is the coolest, and he can't wait to see her again. Also, for what it's worth, I think you're pretty cool too." Alyssa stared at the message, reading it 3 times to make sure she wasn't imagining things. Then, with shaking fingers, she typed out a response. "Alyssa, Emma says Ben is the nicest boy she's ever met. Her words exactly. And thank you for everything tonight. You turned the worst evening into something I won't forget." Lucas. "Good. You shouldn't forget it. Not the bad part. That guy's not worth remembering. But maybe remember the part where you were brave enough to keep going despite everything. That's worth remembering." Alyssa felt tears pressing again, but these were different. These weren't tears of pain or humiliation. These were tears of something that felt dangerously like happiness. Alyssa. "Merry Christmas, Lucas." Lucas. "Merry Christmas. Text me when you get home so I know you're safe." Such a simple request. Such a small gesture of care. But to Alyssa, who'd been so alone for so long, it felt like everything. Alyssa. "I will." She drove home through streets decorated with lights, Emma chattering in the back seat about all the things she and Ben would do together, about the magic of finding a friend on Christmas Eve, about how sometimes bad things turned into good things if you waited long enough. And Alyssa, who'd entered that cafe 3 hours ago believing she was broken beyond repair, who'd sat frozen while a stranger confirmed her worst fears about herself, who'd been so certain this night would be nothing but proof of her unworthiness. Alyssa let herself believe, just for a moment, that maybe Emma was right. Maybe sometimes the bad things did turn into good things. Maybe sometimes the worst night was just the beginning of something better. Maybe, just maybe, she deserved that. The text came 3 days after Christmas, on a gray Thursday morning, while Alyssa was folding laundry and Emma was building an elaborate city out of cardboard boxes. Lucas. "How would you feel about that playdate this weekend? Ben hasn't stopped talking about Emma since Christmas Eve. I'm starting to think he might actually be part parrot." Alyssa stared at the message for a full minute, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. She'd half convinced herself that Christmas Eve had been a fluke, a moment of kindness that would fade into polite distance once the holiday glow wore off. People said things in the moment. They made promises they didn't keep. She'd learned that lesson too many times to count. But here was Lucas following through, actually wanting to see them again. Alyssa. "Emma's been asking about Ben approximately every 12 minutes. I think Saturday would be perfect." "Where were you thinking?" Lucas. "There's a children's museum downtown with a Lego exhibit. Thought the kids might enjoy it, and there's a cafe attached if we need to caffeinate ourselves into survival mode." Alyssa. "That sounds great. What time?" Lucas. 10 a.m.? Fair warning. I promised Ben we could stay as long as he wants, so I'm packing snacks like we're preparing for a siege, sa. Alyssa smiled, something warm unfurling in her stomach. Alyssa. Emma's the same way. Once she's engaged with something, prying her away requires negotiation skills that would impress a hostage negotiator. Lucas. Perfect. Our children can hold each other hostage while we drink coffee and pretend we have any control over the situation. Alyssa. Deal. See you Saturday. She set her phone down and found Emma watching her with those two knowing 5-year-old eyes. Was that Ben's daddy? It was. How did you know? Emma shrugged with the casual wisdom of someone who'd been reading her mother's expressions since birth. You're smiling the way you smile when something makes you happy, but you're trying not to show it. I don't have a special smile. But even as Alyssa said it, she could feel the truth of Emma's words. She was smiling, really smiling, in a way that came from somewhere genuine and unguarded. Yes, you do. Emma abandoned her cardboard city and climbed into Alyssa's lap, curling against her chest the way she'd done since she was tiny. Are we going to see Ben? Saturday, at a museum with Lego. The squeal Emma released was so high-pitched that Alyssa winced. Really? Can I wear my purple dress? The one with the sparkles? You can wear whatever you want, baby. Emma pulled back, studying Alyssa's face with an intensity that was unsettling from someone so young. Do you like Ben's daddy? The question landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples through Alyssa's carefully constructed defenses. He seems very nice. That's not what I asked. Emma's tone was patient, like she was explaining something obvious to a slow learner. Do you like him like the princesses? Like the princes? Emma? Because I think he likes you. He looked at you the way Prince Eric looks at Ariel. Alyssa felt heat creep up her neck. You're 5. You're not supposed to notice things like that. I'm very observant. You said so. Emma yawned, already losing interest in the interrogation as she settled more deeply into Alyssa's arms. I hope he does like you. He seems nice, and Ben is my friend now. Alyssa held her daughter close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, feeling the warm weight of her trust. Emma was so easy with affection, so willing to believe the best of people. Alyssa didn't know if that was beautiful or terrifying. Probably both. By Saturday morning, Alyssa had changed outfits 4 times and given herself 3 separate lectures about being ridiculous. It was a play date for the kids. Nothing more. The fact that she'd spent 45 minutes on her makeup and chosen her nicest jeans, the ones that actually fit well instead of just being comfortable, meant nothing. You look pretty, Mommy, Emma pronounced, twirling in her purple sparkle dress. Like a queen. You look like a princess, baby. Ready to go? The Children's Museum was across town, housed in a converted warehouse with bright murals covering the exterior walls. Alyssa had driven past it 100 times but never gone in. It always seemed like the kind of place for families. Plural, nuclear, complete. Not for a woman in a wheelchair and her daughter. But as she pulled into the accessible parking space and saw Lucas waiting by the entrance with Ben practically vibrating with excitement beside him, something in her chest loosened. Emma! Ben's shout carried across the parking lot. We're here! Lucas put a hand on his son's shoulder, probably reminding him about inside voices, but he was smiling. And when his eyes found Alyssa's, that smile shifted into something that made her breath catch. Hey, Lucas said as they approached. He wore dark jeans and a blue sweater that brought out his eyes, and Alyssa couldn't help but notice, the way he carried himself. Confident, but not cocky. Present. You made it. Traffic wasn't bad. Alyssa was proud of how normal her voice sounded. Someone was very excited. Me too, Ben announced. Dad said we could do whatever we want and stay as long as we want, and there's a whole room of just Lego. Ben, inside voice, Lucas reminded gently. This is my inside voice. Emma giggled, and just like that, the kids were off, racing toward the entrance with the kind of energy that made Alyssa tired just watching. Lucas fell into step beside her wheelchair as they followed. So, he said, I should probably confess something. Alyssa's stomach tightened. Here it came, the catch, the caveat, the thing that would make this all make sense. What's that? I've never actually been here before. Ben's been asking for months, but I kept putting it off because the idea of spending hours in a loud building full of children and chaos sounded like actual torture. Lucas paused. But then I met you and Emma, and suddenly it seemed like maybe it wouldn't be torture. Maybe it would be fun. The honesty of it, the way he just put it out there without games or pretense, made Alyssa's defenses crack a little wider. I've never been here either, for different reasons, but still. Yeah? Lucas held the door open, waiting while she maneuvered through. What reasons? The kind where you convince yourself that some places aren't for people like you. Lucas's expression shifted to something fierce. Every place is for people like you, Alyssa. Anyone who makes you feel otherwise is an idiot. Before Alyssa could respond, Emma and Ben came barreling back, each grabbing a parent's hand and pulling them toward the entrance kiosk. The next 3 hours were chaos in the best possible way. The kids raced from exhibit to exhibit, a water table where they built elaborate dam systems, a wind tunnel where they tested different objects, a dress-up area where Ben reluctantly agreed to be a knight while Emma was a dragon. And through it all, Lucas stayed close to Alyssa, navigating the crowds, making sure she had space, treating her wheelchair like the non-issue it should have been. They ended up in the Lego room, which was exactly what Ben had promised, a massive space filled with thousands of bricks and dozens of half-built creations. The kids immediately claimed a corner and began constructing what appeared to be a purple castle with extensive fortifications. Coffee? Lucas suggested, nodding toward the small cafe area in the corner. Please. I'm going to need caffeine to keep up with them. They settled at a table with a clear view of the kids, close enough to supervise but far enough for actual conversation. Lucas returned with 2 coffees and a plate of cookies that he set between them. So, he said, settling into his chair, tell me something about yourself that has nothing to do with being a mom or the accident or any of the hard stuff. Just something that's purely you. The question caught Alyssa off guard. When was the last time someone had asked her about herself? Not about Emma, not about her medical situation, not about how she was coping, just her. I used to dance, she heard herself say. Before the accident, I was training to audition for a contemporary company. I'd been dancing since I was 3. What kind of dance? All kinds, but contemporary was my passion. I loved the way it combined classical technique with freedom of movement, the way you could tell stories with your body. Alyssa paused, surprised by the ache in her chest. She so rarely let herself think about dancing anymore. I was good too, really good. My instructor said I had something special. I bet you did. Lucas's voice was soft but certain. Do you miss it? Every single day. The admission slipped out before Alyssa could stop it. Sometimes I have dreams where I'm still dancing, where my legs work the way they used to, and then I wake up and remember, and it's like losing it all over again. I'm sorry. Don't be. I mean, thank you, but it's just reality. I had to grieve what I lost and figure out who I am now. Alyssa took a sip of coffee. Some days I'm better at that than others. Lucas was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of experience. After Sarah died, people kept telling me I needed to move on. Like grief was a destination I could leave behind if I just tried hard enough. But it doesn't work that way, does it? The loss becomes part of who you are. You build your life around it and through it, but it never fully goes away. No, Alyssa agreed softly. It doesn't. For what it's worth, I think the person you are now is pretty remarkable. You barely know me. I know enough. Lucas held her gaze. I know you're raising an incredible daughter. I know you showed up for yourself even after being hurt. I know you're sitting here having coffee with me instead of hiding at home where it's safe. Those aren't small things, Alyssa. Before she could respond, Emma appeared at her elbow, breathless and glowing. Mommy, come see! We built a castle with a moat and a dragon's lair and a secret tunnel. Alyssa let herself be pulled toward the corner where Ben was putting finishing touches on what was genuinely an impressive Lego structure. It had towers and battlements and intricate details that showed serious construction skills. This is amazing, guys. Alyssa meant it. Did you plan this out or just start building? We planned it, Ben said seriously. Emma had the idea for the purple towers, and I figured out the engineering for the moat system. He's very good at engineering, Emma added loyally. He's going to be a scientist when he grows up. Or an astronaut, Ben corrected. I haven't decided yet. Lucas appeared beside Alyssa, studying the castle with appropriate reverence. Buddy, this is incredible. Way better than anything I could build. That's because you always try to follow the instructions, Ben said with the patient condescension of a 7-year-old explaining the obvious. Emma says we should just build what we imagine, and I think she's right. Emma's a good influence on you. The best influence, Ben agreed. Then, with the terrifying insight of children everywhere, he added, Dad, can Emma and her mom come to our house sometime? I want to show her my Lego collection. Alyssa felt her breath catch. A museum was one thing, public, neutral territory. But going to Lucas's house? That felt significant in ways she wasn't ready to examine. If Emma and her mom want to, sure, Lucas said, his tone carefully casual. But when his eyes met Alyssa's, she saw the question there. The hope. We'd like that, Alyssa heard herself say, and Emma's squeal of delight echoed through the Lego room. Really? Ben looked like he might explode from excitement. When? Can it be tomorrow or today? Can they come today? How about next weekend? Lucas suggested. Give your dad time to clean the house so we don't look like complete slobs. Our house isn't slobby. Buddy, there are currently 3 loads of unfolded laundry on the couch, and I'm pretty sure something in the fridge has achieved sentience. We need to clean. Alyssa laughed, and the sound felt good, felt real. Our apartment isn't much better. Emma's convinced that cleaning up means shoving everything under her bed. It's called organizing, Emma protested. The kids returned to their castle, and Lucas and Alyssa drifted back to their coffee. But something had shifted. The conversation flowed easier now, moving from parenting challenges to favorite movies to the terrible reality TV shows they were both too embarrassed to admit they watched. Wait, Alyssa said, genuinely shocked. You watch The Bachelor? Religiously. Lucas didn't even look ashamed. Sarah got me hooked during her last year. We'd watch together and make fun of the ridiculous dates and the manufactured drama. After she died, I kept watching because it felt like keeping a piece of her alive. He paused. Is that weird? No, it's actually really sweet. Ben thinks I'm insane. He walked in during the Fantasy Suites episode last season and asked why all the adults were crying about helicopters. Lucas grinned. I had no good answer for that. Because there is no good answer for that show. It's completely ridiculous, and I can't stop watching it either. Something sparked in Lucas's eyes. The new season starts in 2 weeks. I know. We could watch together, if you wanted. You and Emma could come over, we'll make dinner, put the kids to bed, and hate watch whatever drama unfolds. Lucas seemed to catch himself. Sorry, that's probably too much too fast. I'd like that, Alyssa interrupted. Really? It sounds fun. The smile that spread across Lucas's face was worth every ounce of fear churning in her stomach. They stayed at the museum until closing, the kids protesting loudly that they needed just 5 more minutes, at least a dozen times. Finally, Lucas and Alyssa managed to herd them toward the exit, promising they could come back soon. In the parking lot, as Alyssa was loading Emma into the car, Lucas appeared beside her. Hey, he said quietly. I meant what I said about next weekend. No pressure, but I really would like you guys to come over. We'll be there. Alyssa straightened, found Lucas standing close enough that she had to tilt her head to meet his eyes. Thank you for today. Emma had the best time. Emma wasn't the only one who had a good time, I hope. No. Alyssa felt brave, reckless. I had a really good time, too. Lucas's expression softened into something that made her heart skip. Good. Me too. He paused, seemed to wrestle with something, then reached out and gently squeezed her hand. Just for a second, just long enough for the warmth of his palm to sear into her memory. Drive safe, okay? Text me when you get home. You too. That night, after Emma was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Alyssa found herself staring at her phone, at the text thread with Lucas. They'd been messaging all evening, silly observations about their kids, shared jokes, nothing deep but somehow intimate in its ordinariness. Lucas. Ben informed me that Emma is his best friend now, and he's decided we should all move into the same house so they can play together every day. Thought you should know we're apparently co-parenting now. Alyssa. Emma suggested we adopt Ben since He needs more art in his life. And apparently I'm not providing enough brothers. So I guess we're building a commune? Lucas. Works for me. I call dibs on cooking duty. You've seen my Lego skills. I'm clearly not qualified for construction. Alyssa. Deal. I'll handle arts and crafts. Between us, we might manage to raise functional humans. There was a pause, longer than usual, and then, Lucas. Can I tell you something? Alyssa's heart rate picked up. Alyssa. Of course. Lucas. I haven't felt this comfortable with someone in years. Like I can just be myself without pretending or performing or trying to be what I think they want. It's nice. You're nice. More than nice, actually. But I'm trying not to come on too strong and scare you off. Alyssa stared at the message for a long moment, something huge and terrifying expanding in her chest. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, a dozen responses forming and dissolving. Finally, she typed, Alyssa, you're not scaring me off. Honestly, you're the first person since my accident who's made me feel like maybe I'm still allowed to want things. Like maybe I'm still someone worth knowing. Lucas. Alyssa, you are absolutely someone worth knowing. Anyone who doesn't see that is missing out on something extraordinary. Alyssa. You keep saying things like that. Lucas. Because they're true. I'll keep saying them until you believe me. Alyssa felt tears press behind her eyes, but these were good tears. Hopeful tears. Alyssa. Thank you. For everything. For today. For just being kind without making it weird. Lucas. Kindness isn't weird. It's baseline human decency. The fact that you're thanking me for it says a lot about what you've been through, and I hate that for you. Alyssa. Well, you're changing that. You and Ben. You're making me remember what it feels like to just enjoy people. Lucas. Good. Get used to it, because we're not going anywhere. The promise in those words should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like safety. The week crawled by with agonizing slowness. Emma talked about Ben constantly, building elaborate plans for their next play date, asking at least twice a day when they'd see him again. And Alyssa, despite her best efforts to stay rational and guarded, found herself texting with Lucas every day, sometimes about the kids, sometimes about nothing at all. Just connection. Just conversation with someone who seemed to genuinely enjoy talking to her. Friday night, her phone rang instead of buzzed. Lucas's name on the screen made her stomach flip. Hello? Hey. Lucas's voice sounded warm through the phone, intimate in a way that made her shiver. Is this a bad time? No, Emma just went to bed. What's up? I wanted to call and make sure tomorrow's still good for you guys to come over, and to give you the address and any dietary restrictions I should know about. There was a pause. Also, I really just wanted to hear your voice. Alyssa's breath caught. You're very direct. I'm trying this new thing where I say what I'm actually thinking instead of playing games. How's it working? It's terrifying and refreshing in equal measure. Lucas laughed, and the sound traveled through the phone line straight to her chest. Good. So tomorrow, around 2, I'll make lunch, nothing fancy, probably pasta, because that's about the extent of my culinary skills. And Ben's already set up the Lego room for maximum building potential. He has a Lego room? Technically, it's supposed to be a dining room, but we never eat in there anyway, and Ben needed space for his creations. Sarah would probably kill me for enabling him, but Lucas's voice caught slightly. She's not here to object, so Lego room it is. I think it's perfect, Alyssa said softly, and Emma doesn't have any dietary restrictions, so we're easy. Nothing about you is easy, Alyssa Monroe. Lucas's tone shifted to something playful. You're complicated and interesting, and you make me want to know everything about you. Everything is a lot. I've got time. They talked for another hour, about nothing and everything. Lucas told her about his job as a software engineer, about how he'd transitioned to mostly remote work after Sarah died so he could be more present for Ben. Alyssa talked about her online bookkeeping business, how she'd built it from nothing after the accident, how it let her work from home and be there for Emma. You started a business from your hospital bed? Lucas sounded awed. Not much else to do when you're in traction, and I needed to figure out how I was going to support us. Mark left, my dancing career was over, and I had a 2-year-old who needed food and diapers and a future. Alyssa paused. So I took an online course, got certified, and started reaching out to small businesses. Built it one client at a time. That's incredible. It's survival. It's both. Lucas's voice was firm. Don't diminish what you've accomplished, Alyssa. You built something from nothing while dealing with trauma and abandonment and learning to navigate the world in a completely different way. That takes serious strength. Sometimes I don't feel very strong. Strength isn't about feeling strong. It's about doing the hard thing even when you're scared. And from where I'm sitting, you do that every single day. By the time they hung up, it was past midnight, and Alyssa's face hurt from smiling. She fell asleep with her phone clutched in her hand, Lucas's words echoing in her mind like a promise. Saturday arrived bright and cold, one of those winter days where everything sparkled with frost. Emma woke up at 6 a.m., too excited to sleep, and spent the next 8 hours making Alyssa's life a beautiful chaos of anticipation. Is it time yet? Emma, it's 9 a.m. We're not leaving for 5 more hours. But that's so long. Oh, it was in fact the longest 5 hours of Alyssa's life. She changed clothes 3 times, gave herself another lecture about being ridiculous, and somehow still ended up spending 40 minutes on makeup she told herself was casual. Lucas's house was in a quiet neighborhood 20 minutes from their apartment, a 2-story craftsman with a well-maintained yard and a bike lying on the front porch. Normal. Beautifully, perfectly normal. Ben must have been watching for them because the front door flew open before Alyssa even finished parking. "They're here!" His shout carried clearly through her closed windows. "Dad, they're here!" Lucas appeared in the doorway, one hand on Ben's shoulder to keep him from launching himself off the porch. When his eyes found Alyssa's, the smile that spread across his face made every nervous moment of the past week worth it. He'd dressed up too, she noticed. Dark jeans and a deep green Henley that made his eyes look almost hazel. And he was looking at her like she was something precious. "Welcome," Lucas said as they approached. "Fair warning, the house is clean but lived in, and Ben's been cooking up elaborate plans all week. Emma too. I've heard the word Lego approximately 6,000 times." The kids were already racing inside, and Lucas gestured for Alyssa to enter first. The interior was warm and inviting, hardwood floors, comfortable furniture that showed signs of actual use, photos on the walls of Ben at various ages, and a beautiful woman who must have been Sarah. "That's her," Lucas said quietly, following Alyssa's gaze. "Sarah. I keep her pictures up because I want Ben to remember her face, her smile. I want him to know she was real and loved him. She's beautiful." She was. Lucas's voice carried old grief, but not fresh pain. "She would have liked you, I think. She always said I was too serious, that I needed people who could make me laugh. You do that." Before Alyssa could respond, Ben and Emma came charging back through. "Can we show Emma the Lego room now? Please, please, please?" "Go ahead, buddy. Alyssa and I will be in the kitchen if you need us." The kids disappeared up the stairs, and Lucas led Alyssa to a sunny kitchen that smelled like garlic and tomatoes. "I made sauce from scratch," Lucas said, sounding almost shy. "Sarah's recipe. It's basically the only thing I can cook really well, and I wanted to impress you." "You didn't need to impress me." "Maybe I wanted to anyway." Lucas pulled out a chair for her at the kitchen table, and the gesture was so casual, so thoughtful, that it made Alyssa's throat tight. "Wine? Or I have lemonade if you're driving." "Lemonade. I'm definitely driving. Emma will fall asleep on the way home, and I'll have to carry her in." "One of my favorite parts of parenting," Lucas said as he poured. "That specific weight of a sleeping kid, the trust of it. Sometimes Ben falls asleep on the couch, and I carry him to bed. And in those moments, I can almost pretend he's still little, that I still have time before he grows up and doesn't need me anymore. Emma's the same. She's getting so big already. Sometimes I look at her and wonder where my baby went." They fell into easy conversation as Lucas finished cooking, as the smell of pasta and homemade sauce filled the kitchen. Alyssa found herself relaxing in a way she rarely did anywhere outside her own apartment. Lucas moved around the kitchen with comfortable efficiency, and he kept catching her eye, kept smiling like he couldn't quite believe she was really there. Lunch was chaotic and perfect, the kids chattering nonstop about their Lego creations, Lucas and Alyssa trading amused glances over their heads. The whole scene domestic in a way that should have scared Alyssa, but instead felt like coming home. After the kids disappeared back upstairs, and Lucas suggested they move to the living room. "I actually have something I wanted to show you," he said, a hint of nervousness in his voice. "If you're interested." He pulled out a photo album, old and well-worn. This was Sarah's. Pictures from before she got sick, when everything was good. He opened it carefully. "I don't share this with most people, but I want you to know about her, about who we were before." For the next hour, Lucas walked Alyssa through his life. Photos of a younger, happier version of himself with a vibrant red-headed woman and a toddler, Ben. Pictures of family trips and birthday parties and ordinary moments made extraordinary by their absence. "This was her last Christmas," Lucas said softly, pointing to a picture of Sarah in a hospital bed wearing a Santa hat, Ben curled against her side. She was so sick, but she refused to let it ruin his holiday. She spent the whole day pretending she felt fine, playing with Ben's new toys, making memories. His voice cracked slightly. She died 6 weeks later. Alyssa reached out without thinking, placed her hand over Lucas's. He turned his palm up, laced their fingers together, and the simple contact felt monumental. "Thank you for sharing this with me," Alyssa said. "She seems like she was an amazing person." "She was, and I loved her completely." Lucas met Alyssa's eyes. "But she's gone. And it took me a long time to accept that I'm allowed to keep living, to keep feeling, to maybe even—" He paused, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. "To maybe let someone new in." Alyssa's heart was hammering so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Lucas, I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I just want you to know where I'm at. That this—" He gestured between them. "Whatever this is, it matters to me. You matter to me. And I'm not running away from that." Before Alyssa could respond, Emma's voice carried down the stairs. "Mommy, come see what we built." The moment broke, but Lucas squeezed her hand once before releasing it. "We should probably check on them before they start taking apart my furniture for materials." Probably wise. But as they headed upstairs, Alyssa's hand still tingled from his touch, and her mind spun with the weight of what had just passed between them. Lucas wasn't running. He was staying, choosing her, seeing her as more than her wheelchair or her damage. And God help her, Alyssa was starting to believe him. The Lego room was exactly what Ben had promised. A converted dining space transformed into a builder's paradise, with shelves of sorted bricks, half-finished creations on every surface. And in the center, the castle that Emma and Ben had apparently spent the last 2 hours expanding into something that rivaled actual medieval architecture. "Look, Mommy!" Emma's face was flushed with excitement. "We added a whole village, and Ben showed me how to make tiny people with the small pieces." Alyssa surveyed the creation with genuine awe. The attention to detail was remarkable. Miniature houses with different colored roofs, a marketplace with tiny stalls, even a moat system that actually held water in a cleverly constructed trough. "This is incredible, you two. Ben, did you design all of this?" "Emma had lots of ideas too," Ben said generously. "She's really good at making things beautiful. I'm good at making them strong. A perfect team," Lucas observed, standing close enough to Alyssa that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. They spent another hour in the Lego room, Lucas and Alyssa sitting on the floor while the kids explained every intricate detail of their creation. At some point, Lucas's shoulder brushed against hers, and neither of them moved away. The contact was casual, comfortable, but Alyssa was hyper-aware of every point where they touched. By the time evening approached, Emma was starting to fade, her usual boundless energy flagging after hours of intense play. She curled up against Alyssa's side, thumb creeping toward her mouth in the way she only did when she was exhausted. "I think someone's running out of steam," Alyssa said softly, stroking Emma's hair. "Ben, too." Lucas nodded toward where his son was slumped against a pile of pillows, fighting to keep his eyes open. "This is usually when I deploy the secret weapon." "Secret weapon?" "Hot chocolate in a movie. Knocks them out every time." Lucas smiled. "You're welcome to stay, if you want." Alyssa knew she should say no, knew she should take Emma home, maintain boundaries, protect herself from getting too attached too fast. But Emma perked up at the mention of hot chocolate, and Lucas was looking at her with such hope, and she was so tired of being careful. "Hot chocolate sounds perfect." Lucas's smile could have lit the whole house. They migrated to the living room, Lucas disappearing into the kitchen, while Alyssa settled on the couch with Emma curled against her. Ben immediately claimed the spot on Emma's other side, and within minutes the two kids were nestled together like they'd been doing this their whole lives. Lucas returned with steaming mugs and a plate of cookies, setting everything on the coffee table before dropping onto the couch beside Alyssa. The couch wasn't small, but somehow he ended up close enough that their thighs touched. And when Alyssa glanced at him, she caught something heated in his expression before he looked away. "So, what's the movie verdict?" Lucas asked the kids. "Your choice." "Moana," Emma said immediately. "I was going to say that," Ben agreed. "It's the best one." As the opening credits rolled, Alyssa found herself relaxing into the cushions, acutely aware of Lucas beside her. The kids were absorbed in the movie, and in the dim light of the living room, with the glow of the TV and the warmth of the hot chocolate, everything felt suspended in amber, perfect and fragile and impossibly precious. Halfway through the movie, Lucas shifted, and his arm came to rest along the back of the couch behind Alyssa. Not touching her, but close enough that she could lean back if she wanted to. The gesture was casual, almost unconscious, but her heart rate spiked anyway. She leaned back. Lucas's fingers brushed against her shoulder, a whisper of contact that sent electricity down her spine. She could feel him tense slightly, uncertain, and she made a decision. She let herself relax more fully against him, let her head tilt just slightly toward his shoulder. His arms settled more firmly around her, and Alyssa heard his quiet exhale, felt some tension release from his body. They sat like that, not quite cuddling, but definitely not just sitting, while the kids sang along with the movie and the world outside faded to nothing. By the time Moana was returning the heart of Te Fiti, both kids were sound asleep, Emma's head on Alyssa's lap, and Ben sprawled against Lucas's side. "I should get her home," Alyssa whispered, but she didn't move. "Probably," Lucas agreed, also not moving. His fingers were tracing absent patterns on her shoulder, and she didn't think he even realized he was doing it. "Or you could stay a little longer. They're comfortable." "Lucas, I know." His voice was soft, serious. "I know this is moving fast. I know we should probably slow down, be sensible, think about the kids. But Alyssa, I haven't felt this alive in 4 years. Since before Sarah got sick, if I'm being honest. And I don't want to lose that by being too careful." Alyssa's throat was tight. "I'm scared." "Me too." Lucas's arm tightened slightly around her. "Terrified, actually, but I'm more scared of letting this pass by because I was too afraid to take a chance." She turned her head to look at him and found his face much closer than she'd expected. In the dim light, his eyes were dark and intense, and she could see her own uncertainty reflected back at her. "What are we doing?" she whispered. "I don't know." Lucas's free hand came up, his fingers gentle as they brushed a strand of hair from her face. "But I'd like to find out, if you're willing." Alyssa opened her mouth to respond, but her phone buzzed sharply in her pocket, shattering the moment. She fumbled for it, saw an unknown number, almost ignored it, but something made her answer. "Hello? Is this Alyssa Monroe?" A man's voice, unfamiliar and formal. "Yes. Who is this?" "My name is Robert Chen. I'm an attorney, and I'm calling on behalf of my client, Mark Sullivan." The name hit Alyssa like a physical blow. Mark. Emma's father. The man who'd abandoned them 3 years ago without a backward glance. "Why are you calling me?" Her voice came out sharper than intended, and she felt Lucas tense beside her. "My client would like to arrange a meeting with you to discuss his parental rights regarding his daughter, Emma Sullivan." The world tilted. Alyssa's vision tunneled, her breath caught in her chest. Parental rights? He gave up any rights to Emma when he walked away. "Actually, Miss Monroe, my client never legally terminated his parental rights. He's been away, working to establish financial stability, and now he's in a position to be an active part of his daughter's life." "Working to establish financial stability?" Alyssa's voice cracked. "He's had 3 years to establish anything. He abandoned us when Emma was 2 years old." "Mr. Sullivan has a different recollection of events." The attorney's voice remained maddeningly calm. "Regardless, he's prepared to pursue custody through the courts if necessary. However, he'd prefer to reach an amicable arrangement. Would you be willing to meet?" "No." The word came out harsh, definitive. "Absolutely not." If Mark wants to see Emma, he can go through my lawyer. You have legal representation? Alyssa didn't, but she wasn't about to admit that. I'll have my attorney contact you. Don't call me again. She hung up before he could respond, her hand shaking so badly she nearly dropped the phone. The room was spinning, her chest tight, and she couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the roaring panic in her head. Alyssa? Lucas's voice seemed to come from far away. What happened? Who was that? I need to go. Alyssa shifted away from him, away from his warmth, her mind screaming at her to run, to protect Emma, to get out before everything collapsed. I need to take Emma home. Hey, talk to me. Lucas's hand caught hers, gentle but firm. What's going on? It's Mark, Emma's father. She couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't make the words real by speaking them. He's what? Lucas's voice had gone hard, protective. He wants custody. The words came out as a broken whisper. After 3 years of nothing, he wants to take her away from me. Lucas's expression darkened with fury. He can't do that. He abandoned you both. He has parental rights. He never signed them away. Alyssa was shaking now, the full weight of it crushing down on her. He could actually take her, Lucas. He could take my daughter. We won't let that happen. We? The word came out bitter. There is no we. You don't even know me. You don't know what a mess my life is, how damaged I am, how— Stop. Lucas's voice cut through her spiral. Don't do that. Don't push me away because you're scared. I'm not pushing you away. I'm being realistic. Alyssa could hear the panic in her own voice, could feel herself fragmenting. This is my life, Lucas. This is what I come with. Custody battles and ex-boyfriends who abandon me, and a disability that makes me vulnerable in ways you can't even understand. You should run while you still can. I'm not running. Lucas shifted closer, his hands framing her face, making her look at him. Alyssa, I'm not Mark. I'm not going anywhere. You don't know that. Tears were streaming down her face now. You can't promise that. I can promise that I'm not the kind of man who walks away when things get hard. I stayed with Sarah through 18 months of hell. I held her hand while she died. I rebuilt my entire life around being a single father. Hard doesn't scare me. His thumbs brushed away her tears. What scares me is the idea of letting you face this alone when I could be standing beside you. I don't need rescuing. I know you don't. But everyone needs someone in their corner. Let me be in your corner. Lucas's voice was fierce, certain. Please. Alyssa wanted to say yes, wanted to lean into him, to let herself be held, to believe that maybe she didn't have to fight this battle alone. But Emma was stirring in her lap, and the reality of the situation came crashing back. I need to go, she said again, more gently this time. I need to figure this out. Lucas released her, but his eyes never left her face. Okay, but Alyssa, call me later, or tomorrow, whenever. Just don't disappear on me. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and carefully shifted Emma into her arms. Her daughter barely stirred, just nestled closer with a small sigh. Lucas walked them to the door, helped her get Emma situated in the car, his movements gentle and sure. I meant what I said, he told her quietly as she was about to close the car door. I'm not going anywhere. When you're ready to talk, I'll be here. Alyssa drove home through blurred vision, tears she couldn't stop falling as Emma slept peacefully in the back seat. By the time she got Emma into bed, her hands had stopped shaking, but her mind was racing, spinning through scenarios, each one worse than the last. Mark wanted Emma. Mark, who'd sent a text message to end their relationship. Mark, who'd never once called to ask about his daughter, never sent money or birthday cards or any acknowledgement that Emma existed. Now he wanted to be a father? Her phone buzzed. A text from Lucas. Lucas, just checking you got home safely. You don't have to respond. Just know I'm thinking about you. Alyssa stared at the message, torn between gratitude and terror. She'd let Lucas in too far, too fast. She'd let Emma get attached to Ben. She'd built something fragile and beautiful, and now Mark was going to destroy it like he destroyed everything else in her life. She didn't respond to Lucas. Instead, she sat in the dark living room and did what she should have done from the beginning. She Googled lawyers. The next morning, Alyssa had an appointment with Jennifer Hartley, a family law attorney who came highly recommended. The office was in a tall building downtown, all glass and steel, and the kind of intimidating professional atmosphere that made Alyssa feel small. Jennifer turned out to be a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She listened without interruption as Alyssa explained the situation, Mark's abandonment, the phone call, her fears. "First thing," Jennifer said when Alyssa finished, "take a breath. He's trying to scare you, and we're not going to let that work. But he has parental rights that he's neglected to exercise for 3 years. That matters, Alyssa." Jennifer leaned forward. "Tell me about your current situation, your living arrangements, your income, Emma's schooling, medical care, all of it." For the next hour, Alyssa laid out her life in clinical detail, her online bookkeeping business that brought in enough to cover their small apartment and Emma's needs, the accessible modifications she'd made, Emma's preschool, her regular pediatrician appointments, the stability and love Alyssa had fought so hard to provide. And Emma's father provided none of this? No financial support, no contact? Nothing, not a single phone call or dollar. Jennifer made notes, her expression unreadable. "And you? How's your health? Any issues that might affect your ability to care for Emma?" Alyssa's stomach clenched. "I'm in a wheelchair, paralyzed from the waist down after a car accident, but I'm fully capable of—" "I'm not questioning your capability," Jennifer interrupted gently. "I'm asking because Mark's attorney will absolutely bring it up. We need to be prepared for them to argue that your disability makes you less able to provide for Emma." The words, even delivered kindly, felt like knives. "I've been her only parent for 3 years. I've never missed a doctor's appointment or a school event. I've built a business from nothing so I could support us. Her voice broke. "I've given her everything." "I can see that. And we're going to make sure the court sees it too." Jennifer's expression softened. "Alyssa, I'm going to be honest with you. This won't be easy. Mark has rights as Emma's biological father, and the courts generally favor maintaining parental relationships when possible. But he also has 3 years of abandonment working against him, and you have a strong record of providing stable, loving care. What do I need to do?" "Document everything. Every interaction with Emma, every expense, every activity. Get letters from her preschool teachers, her doctor, anyone who can speak to your parenting and Emma's well-being, and—" Jennifer paused. "Be prepared for this to get ugly. If Mark is serious about pursuing custody, his attorney will look for any vulnerability to exploit. My disability, among other things, your living situation, your support system, your income. They'll paint a picture of a struggling single mother unable to provide adequately, while Mark will present himself as the stable, financially secure father who can give Emma opportunities you can't." Alyssa felt sick. "Even though he abandoned us, they'll spin it differently, say he was young and scared, that he's matured, that he wants to be part of his daughter's life now. The courts like redemption narratives." Jennifer's tone turned fiercer. "But we like truth narratives better. And the truth is that you've been an exceptional mother under incredibly difficult circumstances." By the time Alyssa left the attorney's office, she felt simultaneously better and worse. Better because she had a plan, a professional on her side. Worse because Jennifer had made the danger very real. Mark could actually take Emma. Her phone had been buzzing throughout the meeting, messages from Lucas that she'd been ignoring. Lucas: "Good morning. How are you doing?" Lucas: "I know you're probably dealing with a lot right now. Just want you to know I'm here if you need anything." Lucas: "Alyssa, I'm starting to worry. Can you just send me a quick message so I know you're okay?" Guilt twisted in her stomach, but alongside it was fear. Lucas was pulling her towards something: connection, relationship, dependency, and she couldn't afford any of that right now. She needed to focus on Emma, on protecting what they had. She texted back, "Alyssa, I'm okay. Just busy. Talk later." 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. Lucas: "That feels like a brush off. Are you pulling away from me?" Alyssa: "I'm just dealing with some things right now." Lucas: "Let me help." Alyssa: "You can't." Lucas: "I can try." Alyssa stared at the message, tears blurring her vision. She wanted to let him help, wanted to lean on him, to believe that she didn't have to fight this alone. But every instinct screamed at her to protect herself, to not depend on anyone because people left. Mark had left. Her own mother kept her at careful distance. Everyone left eventually. Alyssa, I need some space, Lucas. I'm sorry. This time, the response took longer. Lucas, okay, if that's what you need, but Alyssa, I meant what I said. I'm not going anywhere. Take your space, but know I'll be here when you're ready. She didn't respond, just sat in her car outside the attorney's office and cried until she couldn't cry anymore. The next week was a blur of documentation and fear. Alyssa pulled together every scrap of evidence that proved she was a good mother, bank statements showing regular income, Emma's preschool records full of glowing reports, medical records showing every scheduled appointment attended, photos of their life together. And through it all, she ignored Lucas's messages. Not because she wanted to, but because she couldn't afford the distraction, couldn't afford to let herself need him when he could disappear at any moment. Emma noticed. Of course she noticed. Mommy, when can we see Ben again? She asked for the 10th time, her small face worried. Did we do something wrong? No, baby, you didn't do anything wrong. Mommy just has some things she needs to handle right now. But we're still friends with them, right? Ben and his daddy? Alyssa pulled Emma close, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. Of course we are, sweetheart. But the lie tasted bitter on her tongue. The formal custody petition arrived 8 days after the initial phone call, official court documents that made everything terrifyingly real. Mark was requesting joint custody, alternating weeks, claiming he had both the right and the ability to be an active parent. Jennifer called that evening. I've reviewed the petition. It's aggressive but not unexpected. We have a court date in 6 weeks. That gives us time to build our case. 6 weeks? Alyssa's voice sounded hollow even to her own ears. I know it seems like a long time to wait, but it works in our favor. The longer Mark's been absent, the stronger our argument. Jennifer paused. Alyssa, I need to ask you something. Is there anyone who can testify as a character witness? Friends, family, anyone who can speak to your parenting and your capability? Alyssa thought about her mother, who loved Emma, but looked at Alyssa with such careful pity. Thought about Sarah, her physical therapist, who was professional but not personal. Thought about, there's someone, she heard herself say, but I don't know if he'd be willing. Who? A friend, Lucas Carter. His son is Emma's friend. Even saying his name hurt. But it's complicated. Complicated how? I've been pulling away from him this past week. I got scared and I pushed him away, and I don't know if he'd even want to help me now. Jennifer was quiet for a moment. Alyssa, if this person cares about you and Emma, they'll want to help. But more importantly, do you want them to help? Did she? God, yes. She wanted Lucas there, wanted his steady presence and his certainty that she was worth fighting for. But wanting and deserving were different things. I don't know, Alyssa whispered. Think about it. A character witness who can speak to your daily parenting, who's seen you with Emma in normal situations, can be powerful. Jennifer's tone softened. And Alyssa? It's okay to need people. It doesn't make you weak. After they hung up, Alyssa sat in the dark and let herself think about Lucas for the first time in days. Thought about the way he'd knelt beside her wheelchair that first night. The way he'd shared his wife's memory without making Alyssa feel like a replacement. The way his arm had felt around her shoulders, steady and sure. The way he'd promised he wasn't going anywhere, and she'd run anyway. Her phone was in her hand before she consciously decided to reach for it. Lucas's last message was from 2 days ago, still here, waiting. Alyssa typed and deleted 4 different messages before settling on the simplest one. Alyssa, can we talk? The response came within 30 seconds. Lucas, yes. Now? I can call. Alyssa, please. The phone rang immediately, and Alyssa answered with shaking hands. Hi. Lucas's voice sounded cautious, hopeful. Hi. Alyssa's throat was tight. I'm sorry. For what? For pushing you away. For disappearing. For being scared and taking it out on you. Alyssa. No, let me finish. She took a shaky breath. You were right. I was pulling away because I was terrified, because letting you in means I could lose you, and I've lost so much already that I don't know if I could survive losing something else I care about. Lucas was quiet for a moment. Do you care about me? Yes. The admission felt like stepping off a cliff. I care about you so much it scares me. Good, because I care about you too. And Alyssa, I know you're going through hell right now. I know you're scared about Mark and the custody case and what happens next, but pushing me away doesn't protect you. It just makes you more alone. I don't know how to do this, Alyssa whispered. How to let someone in. How to trust that you'll stay. One day at a time, one moment at a time. You don't have to trust me completely right now. Just trust me enough to let me stand beside you while you fight this. Lucas paused. Alyssa, let me help. Please. And Alyssa, who'd been so strong for so long, who'd carried everything alone because she thought she had to, finally let herself say yes. Okay, she whispered. Okay. The relief in Lucas's exhale was audible. Thank you. Now tell me what's going on. All of it. So she did. She told him about the attorney, about the custody petition, about Jennifer's suggestion for character witnesses. She told him about her fears, about how Mark would use her disability against her, about how terrified she was of losing Emma. And Lucas listened, really listened without trying to fix everything or minimize her fears. When she finally ran out of words, he was quiet for a long moment. Alyssa, I want to be your character witness, if you'll let me. Her breath caught. Lucas, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. I've seen you with Emma. I've seen how much she adores you, how safe and loved she feels with you. I've seen you adapt and overcome and do 100 things every day that most people never have to think about, and you do it all without complaint while still being an amazing mother. His voice was fierce. If anyone tries to claim you're not fit to raise your daughter, they'll have to go through me first. Tears were streaming down Alyssa's face again, but these were different. These were tears of gratitude, of relief, of feeling seen and supported in a way she'd never experienced before. Thank you, she managed. Lucas, I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to thank me. This is what people do when they care about each other. They show up. He paused. Now, when's your next meeting with your attorney? I want to be there. You don't have to. Alyssa. His tone was gentle but firm. I'm showing up. Get used to it. And for the first time since Mark's attorney had called, Alyssa felt something other than terror. She felt hope. The meeting with Jennifer happened 3 days later, and Lucas showed up exactly when he said he would. Alyssa watched through her apartment window as he parked, as he checked his reflection in the car mirror, as he straightened his tie with nervous fingers. He'd dressed up, dark gray suit, white shirt, looking every inch the responsible professional, looking like someone a judge would take seriously. When she opened the door, his eyes found hers immediately, and the smile that spread across his face was like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Hi, he said simply. Hi, you didn't have to dress up. First impressions matter. I want your attorney to know I take this seriously. Lucas stepped inside, and before Alyssa could overthink it, he pulled her into a hug. Not tentative or careful, but firm and sure, his arms solid around her. How are you holding up? Alyssa let herself lean into him for just a moment, breathing in the clean scent of his cologne, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her cheek. Better now that you're here. Good. He pulled back, his hands lingering on her shoulders. Where's Emma? At my mom's. I didn't want her to hear any of this. Smart. Lucas glanced around the apartment, taking in the neat space Alyssa had worked so hard to make accessible and comfortable. This is nice. Homey. It's small. It's perfect for you and Emma. I can see her everywhere. The drawings on the fridge, the books on the shelf, the purple blanket on the couch. His smile was soft. You've built a good life for her here. Before Alyssa could respond, her phone buzzed. Jennifer, letting them know she was outside. The attorney's office felt different this time, less intimidating with Lucas beside her. Jennifer's eyes sharpened when they walked in together, professional assessment giving way to something approving. You must be Lucas Carter, Jennifer said, shaking his hand. Thank you for coming. Thank you for taking Alyssa's case. Lucas settled into the chair beside Alyssa, close enough that their arms brushed. "What do you need from me?" Jennifer dove straight in, asking questions about how long Lucas had known Alyssa and Emma, what he'd observed about their relationship, about Alyssa's parenting. Lucas answered each question with calm certainty, painting a picture of the mother Alyssa hoped she was: devoted, capable, creative in solving problems, fiercely protective of Emma's well-being. "And you've seen her manage Emma's daily care, getting her ready for school, preparing meals, handling bedtime routines." Jennifer was taking rapid notes. "I've seen her do all of that and more. She's adapted her entire apartment to make sure Emma can be independent while still being supervised. She's built a business that lets her work from home, so she's always available. She's—" Lucas glanced at Alyssa, and the pride in his expression made her chest tight. "She's the most capable person I know. The wheelchair isn't a limitation, it's just how she moves through the world." Jennifer nodded, something satisfied in her expression. "Mr. Carter, I'm going to be direct. The opposing counsel will try to discredit your testimony by suggesting you're romantically involved with Alyssa and therefore biased. How would you respond to that?" Alyssa felt her face heat, but Lucas didn't hesitate. "I'd say yes. I care about Alyssa, deeply, but that doesn't make my observations any less valid. If anything, it means I've spent more time with her and Emma than a casual acquaintance would. I've seen them in everyday situations. Tired mornings, stressful moments, regular life. And in every single scenario, Alyssa puts Emma first. That's not bias. That's truth." Jennifer's smile was sharp and approving. "Perfect. That's exactly the kind of honest, straightforward testimony that plays well." She turned to Alyssa. "I'm going to be frank. Having Lucas testify is going to strengthen your case significantly. He's credible, articulate, and he's observed your parenting in natural settings. But Alyssa, you need to be prepared for Mark's attorney to come at you hard. They're going to focus on your disability, your income, your lack of a support system." "I have a support system now," Alyssa said quietly, glancing at Lucas. "Which is good, but they'll argue it's recent and therefore unstable." Jennifer's expression gentled. "I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to prepare you. This hearing is going to be difficult. They're going to say things that hurt, question your capability in ways that feel deeply personal. Can you handle that?" Alyssa thought about everything she'd survived: the accident, the abandonment, rebuilding her entire life from a hospital bed. Thought about 3 years of proving herself every single day, of fighting for every ounce of normalcy for Emma. "I can handle it," she said, and meant it. "Good. Then let's talk strategy." They spent the next 2 hours going over every detail: what to expect in court, how to answer questions, what documentation they still needed. Lucas listened intently, occasionally asking questions that showed he was thinking several steps ahead. By the time they finished, Alyssa's head was spinning, but she felt more prepared than she had since this nightmare began. In the parking lot afterward, Lucas walked her to her car, his hand finding the small of her back in a gesture that felt both protective and intimate. "You okay?" he asked softly. "I think so. It's just a lot." "It is. But Alyssa, you're not alone in this anymore. I meant what I said in there. I'm all in. Whatever you need." Lucas paused, seemed to gather courage. "And I know the timing is terrible, but I need to tell you something." Alyssa's heart stuttered. "What?" "These past few weeks, getting to know you and Emma, it's been—" He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture she was starting to recognize. "I haven't felt this way about anyone since Sarah. I didn't think I could. But then you rolled into that cafe on Christmas Eve, and everything changed." "Lucas, I'm not asking you for anything," he continued quickly. "I know you're dealing with enough without adding relationship pressure, but I needed you to know that this isn't casual for me. You're not casual for me. And whatever happens with this custody case, I'm going to be right here." Alyssa felt tears pressing behind her eyes, the good kind that came from being seen and valued. "I don't know what I did to deserve you." "You don't have to deserve me. You just have to let me stay." Lucas's hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear that had escaped. "Can you do that?" "I can try. That's all I'm asking." He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away, and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead. The gesture was tender, careful, and it made Alyssa's heart ache with longing for more. But more would have to wait. Right now, she needed to focus on Emma, on the battle ahead. The weeks leading up to the custody hearing were a strange mix of terror and normalcy. Alyssa continued working, continued the routine of school drop-offs and bedtime stories. But underneath it all ran a current of constant fear that she might lose everything. Lucas was there through all of it. He came over for dinner twice a week, always bringing ingredients to cook because he'd noticed Alyssa's pantry running low and was too tactful to make it seem like charity. He took Emma and Ben to the park on Saturdays, giving Alyssa time to work and decompress. He called every night after Emma went to bed, just to talk, just to be present. And slowly, carefully, Alyssa let him in, let herself trust that maybe he really wasn't going anywhere. 3 days before the hearing, Mark himself called. Not his attorney, Mark, using a number Alyssa hadn't deleted despite knowing she should have years ago. "Alyssa, it's me!" His voice hit her like a physical blow. 3 years of silence, and now he was calling like they were old friends catching up. "What do you want, Mark?" "I wanted to talk to you before the hearing. Lawyer to lawyer, conversations aren't really working out, and I thought maybe we could—" "There's nothing to talk about." Alyssa's hand was shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. "You gave up the right to talk to me when you texted me from the hospital." "I was young and scared, Alyssa. I made a mistake." "A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday. Abandoning your daughter is a choice." "I want to make it right." Mark's voice took on a pleading quality that made her sick. "I've got a good job now, a stable life. I can give Emma things you can't—" "Stop!" The word came out sharp as broken glass. "Don't you dare finish that sentence. I'm just saying, I have resources, a house, good schools in my district, the ability to provide opportunities. I provide everything Emma needs." Alyssa's voice was shaking with fury. "I've been providing it for 3 years while you did nothing. You don't get to waltz back in now and pretend you're the solution. The courts might see it differently, especially when they learn about your situation." There it was, the threat wrapped in concern, the implication that her disability made her less than. "My situation," Alyssa said coldly, "is that I'm a successful business owner who's raised a happy, healthy, loved child entirely on my own. Your situation is that you're a deadbeat father trying to manipulate his way back into the picture. Let's see which one the courts find more compelling." "Alyssa." She hung up, and then immediately called Lucas, her hands still shaking, her breath coming in gasps. "Hey, I was just thinking about—" "Alyssa? What's wrong?" Mark called. The words came out broken. "He actually had the nerve to call me and try to justify this. And Lucas, he threatened me. Not directly, but he implied that my disability would work against me, and I can't— Where are you?" "Home. Emma's asleep." "I'm coming over." "Lucas, you don't have to—" "I'm already getting my keys. I'll be there in 15 minutes. He made it in 12. Alyssa opened the door to find him in sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair disheveled like he'd been getting ready for bed, and the sight of him, solid and real and there, broke something open in her chest. "Come here," Lucas said, and pulled her into his arms. Alyssa went, let herself be held, let herself shake and cry and fall apart in a way she never allowed herself to with Emma around. Lucas held her through it, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring quiet reassurances that she barely heard but felt nonetheless. When she finally pulled back, his shirt was damp with her tears, and his eyes were fierce with protective fury. "What did he say exactly?" Lucas's voice was controlled, but she could hear the anger underneath. Alyssa told him everything, Mark's fake concern, his implications about providing better opportunities, his veiled threats about her disability. "He's trying to shake your confidence," Lucas said when she finished. "Make you doubt yourself before you even get to court. Don't let him." "Easy to say." "I know, but Alyssa, listen to me." Lucas took her hands, held them tight. "You are an incredible mother. Emma is thriving because of you, not in spite of you. The wheelchair doesn't make you less capable. It makes you more creative, more determined, more attuned to what Emma needs. Any judge who can't see that is blind." "What if they are blind? What if Mark wins and I lose her? The fear she'd been trying to contain spilled out. Lucas, she's everything. If I lose Emma, I don't know how I'll survive it. You won't lose her. Lucas's certainty was absolute. But if the impossible happens, if somehow everything goes wrong, you'll survive because that's what you do. You survived the accident, survived Mark leaving, survived rebuilding your entire life. You're the strongest person I know. I don't feel strong right now. Strength isn't about feeling strong. It's about getting up and fighting even when you're terrified. Lucas pulled her closer. And you don't have to do it alone. Not anymore. They sat together on the couch until the shaking stopped, until Alyssa could breathe normally again. Lucas made tea, found the kettle and mugs without asking, moved around her kitchen like he belonged there, and they talked about nothing and everything until the panic receded. "Stay," Alyssa heard herself say as Lucas was getting ready to leave. "Please. I don't want to be alone tonight." Lucas's eyes searched hers. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. Just stay. Sleep on the couch. I just need to know you're here." "Okay." Lucas kicked off his shoes, settled onto the couch. "But Alyssa, I'm not sleeping on the couch." Her breath caught. "What?" "I'm going to sit right here until you fall asleep. Then I'll move to the couch. But I'm not leaving you alone while you're this upset." It was such a small thing, such a simple gesture of care. But it made Alyssa's throat tight with emotion. She curled up on the other end of the couch, pulled a blanket over herself, and let Lucas's steady presence calm the storm inside her. She didn't remember falling asleep, but she woke hours later to find herself stretched across the couch with Lucas's jacket tucked around her like a blanket, and Lucas himself asleep in the armchair, his neck at an angle that was definitely going to hurt in the morning. Alyssa watched him sleep for a moment. This man who'd shown up for her again and again, who'd promised not to leave and kept proving it true. And she made a decision. Whatever happened in that courtroom, whatever the judge decided, she was going to let herself love Lucas Carter. She was going to let herself believe in the possibility of something good, something lasting, because life was too short and too hard to push away the people who wanted to stay. The morning of the hearing arrived cold and bright, the kind of winter day where everything looked sharp-edged and unforgiving. Alyssa dressed in her best outfit, a navy blue dress and blazer that her mother had helped her pick out, professional and put together. She did her makeup carefully, styled her hair, put on the brave face she'd perfected over 3 years of being strong for Emma. Lucas picked them up at 8. He'd arranged for Ben to stay with his sister so he could be fully present, and he looked every inch the credible witness in a charcoal suit and burgundy tie. "You look beautiful," he said when she opened the door, and the sincerity in his voice made her believe it. "You clean up pretty well yourself." "I try." Lucas knelt down to Emma's level. "Hey, sunshine. You ready for your day with Grandma?" "Uh-huh." Emma was oblivious to the tension thrumming through the adults, excited about a day of being spoiled. "Grandma says we're going to make cookies." "That sounds perfect." Lucas hugged her, and Alyssa's heart cracked at the tenderness of it. "Have fun, okay?" They dropped Emma at Alyssa's mother's house, and then it was just the two of them heading downtown to the courthouse. Lucas drove, one hand on the wheel, and the other reaching over to hold Alyssa's, his thumb tracing steady circles on her palm. "Whatever happens in there," he said quietly, "we face it together, okay?" "Okay?" The courthouse was exactly as intimidating as Alyssa had imagined, all marble and echoing halls and people in expensive suits moving with purpose. Jennifer met them in the lobby, looking sharp in a black pantsuit. "Ready?" she asked Alyssa. "As I'll ever be." "Good. Remember what we talked about. Answer questions directly, don't get defensive, and trust that the truth is on your side." Jennifer glanced at Lucas. "Mr. Carter, you'll be called as a witness. Until then, you'll need to wait in the hallway." "I understand." Lucas squeezed Alyssa's hand once more. "You've got this." The courtroom was smaller than she'd expected, but no less intimidating. Mark was already there with his attorney, a sharp-looking woman in her 40s who studied Alyssa with calculating eyes. And Mark himself looked different than Alyssa remembered. Older, more polished, wearing an expensive suit and an expression of concerned fatherhood that made her want to scream. He'd been handsome once, in a conventional way. Dark hair, strong jaw, the kind of smile that had made 25-year-old Alyssa believe in forever. But looking at him now, all she saw was the man who'd texted her from a hospital bed to end their relationship. The man who'd looked at his daughter and decided she wasn't worth the inconvenience. The judge entered, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and an expression that gave nothing away. The bailiff called the court to order, and Alyssa felt her heart hammering so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. Mark's attorney went first, painting a picture of a father who'd made mistakes but was ready to step up, who had resources and stability and a genuine desire to be part of his daughter's life. She was good. Alyssa had to give her that. She made Mark sound sympathetic, like a young man who'd panicked but had grown into someone responsible. Then it was Jennifer's turn. Your Honor, this case is quite simple. Miss Monroe has been Emma's sole caretaker for 3 years. In that time, Mr. Sullivan has provided zero financial support, made zero attempts at contact, and shown zero interest in his daughter's well-being. Now, suddenly, he wants custody. Not visitation, not a gradual reintroduction. Custody. This isn't about Emma's best interests. This is about a man trying to assuage his guilt. Mark's attorney objected, claiming Jennifer was making assumptions about her client's motivations. The judge sustained it, but Alyssa could see she was listening carefully. The questioning began. Mark took the stand first, and Alyssa had to sit through him explaining, with what sounded like genuine emotion, how he'd been overwhelmed and scared when she had her accident, how he'd made the worst mistake of his life walking away, how he'd spent 3 years getting his life together so he could be the father Emma deserved. And you believe that 3 years of absence can be made up for with financial stability? Jennifer asked during cross-examination. I believe children need more than love. They need opportunities, security, a stable environment. Mark's eyes flicked to Alyssa. I can provide things that Alyssa, through no fault of her own, simply can't. Such as? A house with a yard, access to better schools, the ability to participate in activities that require, he hesitated, choosing his words carefully, physical involvement. There it was. The knife slipped between her ribs with surgical precision. Mr. Sullivan, are you suggesting that Miss Monroe's disability makes her an inadequate parent? I'm suggesting that Emma deserves every opportunity, and I'm in a position to provide those opportunities. Jennifer let that hang in the air for a moment before pivoting. Mr. Sullivan, in the past 3 years, how many times have you called to check on Emma? I didn't think Alyssa would want to hear from me. That wasn't the question. How many times? None. How many birthday cards have you sent? None, but how much financial support have you provided? I was building my career. None. The answer is none. Jennifer's voice was sharp. You've done nothing for 3 years, and now you want the court to believe you're suddenly Father of the Year? Mark's attorney objected, and the judge reminded Jennifer to keep her questions professional, but the point had been made. Then it was Alyssa's turn. Walking to the witness stand felt like the longest journey of her life. Every eye in the courtroom followed her, and she was hyper-aware of the soft whir of her wheelchair, the way it announced her difference before she even opened her mouth. She was sworn in, and Jennifer began with easy questions, establishing her work, her income, her daily routine with Emma. Alyssa answered carefully, painting a picture of stability and normalcy, but then Mark's attorney stood for cross-examination, and the gloves came off. Ms. Monroe, you work from home. Is that correct? Yes. And your income is approximately $45,000 annually? Yes. That's quite a bit less than Mr. Sullivan's income of $90,000. Do you struggle financially? Alyssa kept her voice steady. We live within our means. Emma has everything she needs. Everything she needs or everything you can provide. There's a difference. The attorney's smile was sharp. You rent a 2-bedroom apartment, correct? Mr. Sullivan owns a 4-bedroom house. A house doesn't make someone a good parent. No, but it provides space, stability. Tell me, Ms. Monroe, what happens when Emma wants to have friends over? When she wants to play in a yard, ride a bike, participate in sports that require parental involvement? I participate in everything Emma does. Alyssa felt her composure starting to crack. I'm at every school event, every play date, But can you coach her soccer team? Can you take her hiking? Can you teach her to ride a bike? The attorney leaned forward. I'm not trying to be cruel, Miss Monroe, but we need to address the reality of your situation. You're paralyzed from the waist down. There are simply things you cannot do. There are things I do differently, Alyssa corrected, her voice shaking but firm. But different doesn't mean inadequate. I've adapted every aspect of my life to make sure Emma has everything she needs. Adapted, yes. But is adaptation enough? Emma is only 5 now. What happens when she's 10, 12, 15? When she needs a parent who can keep up with her physically, who can… Objection! Jennifer was on her feet. Counsel is speculating about hypothetical future scenarios that have no bearing on current custody determination. Sustained. The judge's voice was firm. Stick to current facts, counselor. But the damage was done. Mark's attorney had planted the seed. The question of whether Alyssa's disability made her inherently less capable, less able to provide what Emma needed. The questioning continued, each question designed to highlight Alyssa's limitations, to paint her as someone struggling to cope rather than thriving despite challenges. By the time she was dismissed, Alyssa felt flayed open, every insecurity she'd ever had about her parenting laid bare for judgment. Lucas was called next, and watching him take the stand gave Alyssa her first breath of relief since the hearing began. Jennifer established his credentials, his own experience as a single father, his professional stability, his observations of Alyssa and Emma over the past several weeks. Mr. Carter, you've spent significant time with Miss Monroe and her daughter. In your observation, how would you characterize their relationship? Lucas's answer was calm and certain. Emma adores her mother, and more importantly, she feels safe with her. I've watched Alyssa handle everything from scraped knees to bedtime battles, and in every situation, Emma's well-being is her top priority. Can you give specific examples? Last week, Emma had a nightmare. I was there for dinner, and I watched Alyssa talk her down, make her feel safe, handle the situation with patience and love. I've seen her navigate playgrounds designed for able-bodied parents, finding creative ways to supervise and participate. I've watched her turn everyday activities into learning opportunities, cooking together, reading together, just being present in ways that matter. And the wheelchair, does it impact her ability to parent? The wheelchair is how she moves. That's it. It doesn't make her less capable. If anything, it's taught Emma adaptability, creativity, and empathy beyond her years. Lucas's eyes found Alyssa's across the courtroom. Emma isn't being raised by someone limited. She's being raised by someone who's shown her that obstacles are just problems waiting for solutions. Mark's attorney stood for cross. Mr. Carter, isn't it true that you're romantically involved with Miss Monroe? We're close, yes. So your testimony is biased. My testimony is informed by direct observation. I've seen both good parenting and struggling parenting in my life, and I know the difference. Alyssa is one of the best parents I've ever known. You've known her for less than 2 months, hardly enough time to make such a sweeping judgment. I've known her long enough to see what matters, and what matters is that Emma is happy, healthy, and loved. Those aren't things that take years to observe. The attorney tried several more angles, but Lucas remained unshakable, his certainty in Alyssa never wavering. By the time he was dismissed, Alyssa felt tears pressing behind her eyes, not from despair but from gratitude for this man who believed in her so completely. The final witness was Emma's preschool teacher, who testified about Emma's development, her social skills, her happiness. She painted a picture of a well-adjusted child being raised by an attentive, involved parent. Then came closing arguments. Mark's attorney emphasized opportunity and resources, painting Mark as the parent who could provide material advantages while carefully avoiding direct attacks on Alyssa's disability. Jennifer was fierce and uncompromising. She talked about abandonment and consistency, about the difference between showing up and showing off, about how love and stability mattered infinitely more than square footage and income. And then it was over. The judge announced she'd take the matter under advisement and issue a ruling within 2 weeks. 2 weeks of waiting, 2 weeks of not knowing if Alyssa's world was about to end. In the hallway outside the courtroom, Lucas pulled her into his arms, and Alyssa finally let herself break. The tears came hard and fast, 3 hours of controlled composure shattering all at once. "You did so well," Lucas murmured against her hair. "You were incredible in there." "She's going to rule against me." Alyssa's voice was muffled against his chest. Did you hear those questions? She basically said, I'm not capable. She said nothing of the sort. She played her role, that's all. But Alyssa, the judge was listening, really listening. Did you see her face when I was testifying? She gets it. You don't know that. I believe it, and you need to believe it too. Lucas pulled back, his hands framing her face. 2 weeks. We can survive 2 weeks. Together. Alyssa nodded, not trusting her voice. Jennifer approached, her expression carefully neutral. You did well in there, both of you. Now we wait. What are the chances? Alyssa had to ask. Jennifer was quiet for a moment. Honestly, I think they're good. The abandonment angle is strong, and you present it as a capable, loving parent. But I won't lie to you. It could go either way. Judges have broad discretion in custody cases, and a lot depends on her personal views about disability and parenting. It wasn't the reassurance Alyssa wanted, but it was honest. She appreciated that. They drove back to pick up Emma, and Alyssa forced herself to smile, to be present for her daughter, to pretend that her entire world wasn't hanging in the balance. Emma chattered about the cookies she'd made, oblivious to the storm surrounding her, and Alyssa held her tight and prayed to whatever forces might be listening that she wouldn't have to let go. That night, after Emma was asleep, Lucas stayed. They sat on the couch in the dark, his arm around her shoulders, neither of them speaking because there was nothing left to say. Just presence. Just the promise that whatever came next, they'd face it together. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Alyssa let herself believe that might be enough. The 2 weeks that followed the hearing stretched out like years. Each day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Every hour waited with the knowledge that somewhere a judge was deciding Emma's fate. Alyssa threw herself into routine because routine was all she had. Work, meals, bedtime stories, the careful rhythm of normalcy that kept the panic at bay. Lucas was there through all of it. He'd stopped asking permission to be part of their lives and simply showed up, weaving himself into their days so seamlessly that Emma started setting 3 places at the table without being asked. Some mornings, Alyssa would wake to find him already in her kitchen, making breakfast while Ben and Emma built elaborate Lego cities on the living room floor. Other nights he'd appear after Emma was asleep, bringing takeout and his steady presence, sitting with Alyssa in the dark while she tried not to fall apart. You don't have to keep doing this, Alyssa said one evening, 9 days into the waiting. They were on her couch again, the same spot they'd occupied so many nights, his arm around her shoulders like it belonged there. Doing what? Taking care of me. You have your own life, your own kid. You don't need to spend every evening managing my crisis. Lucas shifted to look at her directly, his expression serious. Is that what you think this is? Me managing your crisis? Isn't it? No. His hand found hers, laced their fingers together. Alyssa, I'm not here out of obligation or pity or some misguided rescue fantasy. I'm here because this is where I want to be, because you and Emma have become part of my life in a way I didn't think was possible anymore. We've known each other for 6 weeks. I know. Doesn't change anything. Lucas's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. Sarah and I knew each other for 3 months before we got engaged. Everyone said we were crazy, moving too fast, but when you know, you know. And Alyssa, I know. Her breath caught. Know what? That I'm falling in love with you. The words hung in the air between them, simple and devastating. I'm falling in love with your strength and your stubbornness, and the way you love your daughter with your whole heart. I'm falling in love with your laugh and your terrible habit of reorganizing things when you're anxious, and the way you always put extra marshmallows in Emma's hot chocolate even though she never finishes them. Lucas paused, his eyes searching hers. I know the timing is terrible. I know you've got enough on your plate without adding my feelings to the mix. But I needed you to know, before the ruling comes down, that this isn't temporary for me. Whatever happens, I'm not going anywhere. Alyssa felt tears sliding down her cheeks, but for once they weren't tears of fear. I'm falling in love with you too, she whispered. It terrifies me, but I am. Lucas's smile was like sunrise. He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away, and kissed her. It was soft and careful and full of promise, and when they broke apart, Alyssa felt something settle in her chest, something that felt dangerously like hope. Whatever the judge decides, Lucas said quietly, we'll face it together. If she rules in your favor, we'll celebrate. If she doesn't, his jaw tightened. Then we'll figure out the next step. But Alyssa, I need you to hear this. You are not losing Emma. That little girl belongs with you, and any judge with half a brain will see that. You can't promise that. Watch me. The call came on a Tuesday morning, 12 days after the hearing. Alyssa was working at her desk while Emma played nearby when her phone rang with Jennifer's number. Her heart stopped. Hello? Alyssa, it's Jennifer. The judge issued her ruling. Time seemed to stop. Alyssa could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears, could feel the blood draining from her face. And? Full custody remains with you. Mark gets supervised visitation rights, 1 afternoon per month, with the option to petition for increased visitation after 6 months of consistent participation. The relief hit so hard that Alyssa actually gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. What? You won, Alyssa. Emma stays with you. I won. She repeated it because it didn't feel real, because after weeks of terror it seemed impossible that it could be over. I actually won. The judge's ruling was very clear. She stated that while Mr. Sullivan's desire to be part of Emma's life is noted, his 3-year absence and lack of support demonstrate a pattern of unreliability that outweighs any material advantages he might offer. She also specifically noted that your disability in no way impairs your parenting ability, and that Emma is clearly thriving in your care. Jennifer's voice held a smile. She quoted Lucas's testimony almost verbatim in her decision. His statement about you teaching Emma that obstacles are just problems waiting for solutions made a significant impact. Alyssa was crying now, great heaving sobs of relief that she couldn't control. Thank you. Jennifer, thank you so much. You did this, not me. You showed up, you told your truth, and you proved what I already knew, that you're an exceptional mother. Jennifer paused. Mark's attorney has 30 days to file an appeal, but given the strength of the ruling, I don't think they will. It's over, Alyssa. After they hung up, Alyssa sat in stunned silence, the words replaying in her mind. Full custody. Emma was staying. She wasn't losing her daughter. Mommy? Emma looked up from her coloring. Why are you crying? Because I'm happy, baby. So happy. Alyssa pulled Emma into her lap, held her tight, breathed in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. I love you so much. I love you too, Mommy. Emma squirmed slightly. Can I go back to coloring now? Alyssa laughed, a sound of pure joy. Yes, sweetheart. You can go back to coloring. Her fingers were shaking as she pulled out her phone and called Lucas. Hey, he answered on the first ring. Everything okay? I won. Her voice cracked on the words. Lucas, I won. The judge ruled in my favor. Emma stays with me. The sound Lucas made was somewhere between a laugh and a shout of triumph. I knew it! Alyssa, I knew you would win. You couldn't have known. I did know. Because truth matters, and your truth is that you're an incredible mother who deserves her daughter. She could hear movement on his end, keys jingling. I'm coming over, right now. We're celebrating. You don't have to… Alyssa Monroe, stop telling me what I don't have to do and just let me celebrate with you, please. She was smiling so hard her face hurt. Okay, yes, come over. Lucas arrived 20 minutes later with Ben in tow, both of them grinning like they'd won the lottery. Ben immediately launched himself at Emma, announcing that they needed to build a victory castle, while Lucas pulled Alyssa into his arms and held her like she was something precious. I'm so proud of you, he murmured against her hair. So damn proud. I was terrified. I know, but you did it anyway. Lucas pulled back, his hands framing her face. You fought for your daughter and you won. And Alyssa, that took incredible courage. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have, but I'm grateful you didn't have to. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of all the promise they'd been too afraid to voice. When they broke apart, both kids were staring at them with wide eyes. Are you kissing? Ben asked, his tone suggesting this was both fascinating and slightly disgusting. Yes, Lucas said simply, not releasing Alyssa. Is that okay with you? Ben considered this seriously. Does this mean Emma and Alyssa are going to live with us? That's something the grown-ups need to talk about, Lucas said carefully. But yes, I hope so. Eventually. Good. Ben turned back to Emma. Come on, we need more purple bricks for the victory tower. The kids raced off and Alyssa looked at Lucas with raised eyebrows. Eventually? Too fast? Maybe. She smiled. But I kind of like it anyway. That evening, after the kids were fed and exhausted from an impromptu celebration involving pizza, ice cream, and a truly impressive amount of Lego, Lucas tucked Ben into his sleeping bag on the living room floor while Alyssa put Emma to bed. "Mommy," Emma said sleepily as Alyssa smoothed her hair, "is Lucas going to be my new daddy?" The question landed like a thunderbolt. "Would you want that, baby?" "Uh-huh. He's nice, and Ben is my best friend." Emma yawned. "And you smile more when Lucas is here. The real smiles, not the pretend ones." Alyssa's throat was tight. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart. You told me so." Emma's eyes were already closing. "I love you, Mommy." "I love you too, baby. So much." When Alyssa rolled back into the living room, she found Lucas standing by her bookshelf, studying the photos she kept there. Pictures of Emma at various ages, of the two of them together, of the life they'd built from ashes. "She asked if you were going to be her new daddy," Alyssa said quietly. Lucas turned, something vulnerable in his expression. "What did you say?" "I asked if she'd want that." "And?" "She said yes. Because you're nice, and Ben is her best friend, and I smile more when you're around." Alyssa moved closer. "Apparently I have real smiles and pretend smiles, and she can tell the difference." "Kids are perceptive like that." Lucas closed the distance between them. "For what it's worth, Ben asked me last week when you and Emma were moving in. Apparently he's already planned out how you'll share his Lego room." "We've known each other 6 weeks," Alyssa repeated, but this time it wasn't an objection, just an observation. 6 weeks and a lifetime, Lucas agreed. "Sometimes that's how it works. My parents got engaged after 3 dates and were married for 42 years before my dad died. My sister dated her husband for 7 years before getting married, and they were divorced within 2. He took her hands. "Time doesn't guarantee anything, Alyssa, but intention does. And my intention is to love you and Emma for as long as you'll let me." "That's a pretty serious intention." "I'm a pretty serious guy." Lucas smiled. "So what do you say? Want to see where this goes?" Alyssa thought about all the reasons she should say no, should slow down, should protect herself. But she was so tired of being afraid, so tired of holding back from the possibility of happiness because it might end badly. Lucas had proven himself again and again. He'd stayed when she pushed him away, stood beside her through the worst of the custody battle, loved Emma like she was already his. "Yes," she said simply, "I want to see where this goes." The kiss Lucas gave her then was different from the others, deeper, more certain, full of promise and heat, and all the possibilities stretching before them. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. "Fair warning," he said, "I'm going to want to marry you someday. Not tomorrow, not next week, but someday. Is that something you could see yourself wanting?" Alyssa's heart was racing. "Maybe. Ask me again when we hit the 3-month mark." "Deal." The weeks that followed felt like stepping into sunshine after years in shadow. Mark's attorney never filed an appeal, and the supervised visitation was scheduled to begin in a month. Alyssa was dreading it. The idea of Emma spending time with the man who'd abandoned them made her physically ill. But Jennifer had been clear that the court would view any attempt to prevent it as parental alienation. So Alyssa would smile and be civil and let Emma see her father one afternoon a month, because that's what the ruling required. But the rest of the time, life was better than Alyssa had ever imagined it could be. Lucas and Ben became permanent fixtures in her days, their presence as natural as breathing. They fell into routines. Sunday dinners where Lucas cooked and the kids played, Wednesday movie nights where they all piled onto the couch, Saturday mornings at the park where Lucas pushed both kids on the swings, while Alyssa supervised from her wheelchair and felt her heart expand with contentment. 2 months after the custody ruling, On another Christmas Eve, exactly 1 year after that terrible night at the cafe, Lucas suggested they all go back to the same place where they'd met. Are you sure? Alyssa asked. Don't you think it might bring up bad memories? I think it might create better ones, Lucas said. Besides, the kids have been begging to go back. Something about the hot chocolate being magic. So they went, the four of them this time, a unit instead of two separate broken pieces. The cafe looked exactly the same, decorated with the same twinkling lights and garland, the same Christmas music playing overhead, but everything else was different. They slid into a booth, the kids immediately demanding hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. As they waited for their order, Alyssa found herself looking around, remembering that night, the humiliation, the pain, the certainty that she was unlovable. What are you thinking about? Lucas asked softly, his hand covering hers on the table. About how much has changed in a year. Good changes? The best changes. Alyssa squeezed his hand. A year ago, I thought that night was proof that I'd never be worth loving, that the wheelchair made me fundamentally undesirable. And now you know the truth, Lucas finished, that you were always worth loving. The right person just hadn't found you yet. The right people, Alyssa corrected, glancing at where Emma and Ben were coloring on paper placemats, their heads bent together in concentration. Plural. Plural, Lucas agreed. He was quiet for a moment, then seemed to make a decision. Alyssa, I know it's only been 2 months since the ruling, 3 months since we met. I know we said we'd wait, take things slow, but I need to tell you something. Alyssa's heart started racing. Okay. I love you, completely, totally, no reservations. I love your strength and your vulnerability and the way you've built a life out of circumstances that would have broken most people. I love how you are with Emma, how you've welcomed Ben into your life, how you make me want to be better. Lucas took a breath. And I know it's too soon, and I'm not asking you for anything right now, but I needed you to know. You're it for me, Alyssa. You and Emma are my future, if you'll have me. Alyssa felt tears pressing behind her eyes, but they were happy tears. I love you too, she whispered. I think I started falling in love with you that first night when you knelt beside my wheelchair like it was the most natural thing in the world, when you looked at me and saw a person instead of a disability. You are a person, an extraordinary person. Lucas glanced at the kids, who were still absorbed in their coloring, then reached into his pocket. I know I said I wasn't asking for anything, but I might have lied a little bit. He pulled out a small velvet box. Alyssa's breath stopped. Lucas? Before you panic, this isn't an engagement ring. Not exactly. He opened the box to reveal a delicate silver band with 3 small stones, purple, blue, and green. It's a promise ring. Purple for Emma, blue for Ben, green for the future we're building together. I'm not asking you to marry me tonight, Alyssa, but I'm asking if you'll wear this as a promise that we're heading that direction, that you're willing to build a life with me and Ben, the same way I want to build one with you and Emma. Alyssa stared at the ring, at the thoughtfulness of the colors, at the way Lucas had included both children in this moment. It's beautiful. Is that a yes? It's a yes. She held out her hand, watching as Lucas slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, catching the cafe lights and sending little rainbows across the table. But Lucas, I need to tell you something too. His expression turned cautious. Okay, I'm terrified. Of this working out and of it not working out, of letting myself need you and then losing you, of Emma getting hurt if things don't work out. I'm terrified of all of it. Alyssa took a shaky breath. But I'm more terrified of letting fear stop me from having something beautiful. So yes, I'll wear your promise ring. And yes, I want to build a life with you. And yes, someday when you ask me to marry you, my answer is going to be yes to that too. Lucas's smile could have lit the entire cafe. Someday soon? Someday when you've survived at least one family holiday with my mother and witnessed me having a complete meltdown over something ridiculous like running out of coffee. Alyssa smiled through her tears. I want you to know what you're signing up for. I already know what I'm signing up for, but if you need me to prove I can handle your mother and your coffee emergencies, I'm willing to put in the work. You're ridiculous. I'm in love. Lucas leaned across the table and kissed her, soft and sweet and perfect. Ben's voice broke through the moment. They're kissing again, Emma giggled. I think it's nice. My mommy deserves kisses. Can we get hot chocolate now? Ben asked with the single-minded focus of a 7-year-old who'd reached his limit for romance. Yes, buddy. Hot chocolate for everyone. The waitress appeared with their order, the same young woman who'd served them that terrible night a year ago. She did a double take when she saw Alyssa and Lucas together. Wait, I remember you, she said to Alyssa. You were here last Christmas Eve. That guy was awful to you. He was, Alyssa agreed, feeling Lucas's hand tighten on hers. And now you're here with... The waitress looked between them, understanding dawning. Oh my gosh, are you the guy who went after him in the parking lot? Lucas looked slightly embarrassed. That was me. That was the most romantic thing I've ever seen. The waitress set down their drinks with a huge smile. This round's on me. Merry Christmas, you guys. After she left, Alyssa raised an eyebrow at Lucas. The most romantic thing she's ever seen? I may have been slightly more aggressive with Mark than I admitted to you. How aggressive? Let's just say I made it very clear that if he ever spoke to you that way again, he'd be having a much less pleasant conversation with me. Lucas had the grace to look sheepish. In my defense, I was really angry. My hero, Alyssa said, but she was smiling. They stayed at the cafe until closing, the same way they had a year ago, but everything was different now. The kids were half asleep against their parents, full of hot chocolate and cookies and the particular exhaustion that comes from pure happiness. And Alyssa and Lucas sat close together, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist, the promise ring on her finger catching the light every time she moved. Do you believe in fate? Alyssa asked quietly as they were getting ready to leave. I believe in choice, Lucas said. I believe you chose to show up that night even though you were terrified. I believe I chose to stand up for you instead of looking away. I believe we both chose to take a chance on something that scared us. He kissed the top of her head. But yeah, maybe a little bit of fate too. Because what are the odds that we'd both be in this cafe, on this night, both single parents looking for something we didn't know we needed? Pretty astronomical. Exactly. So maybe the universe gave us a push, but we did the rest ourselves. They loaded the sleepy kids into Lucas's car, because somewhere along the way they'd started sharing rides, sharing meals, sharing life, and drove through streets lit with Christmas lights. Emma was asleep before they made it 2 blocks, her head resting against Ben's shoulder, both of them peaceful and perfect. When they got back to Alyssa's apartment, Lucas carried Emma inside and tucked her into bed while Alyssa got Ben settled on the couch. They moved around each other with practiced ease, a rhythm they'd developed over months of shared parenting. Stay tonight, Alyssa said when both kids were asleep. Not on the couch. With me. Lucas's eyes searched hers. Are you sure? I'm sure. I don't want to spend another night pretending we're not building towards something permanent. I want you here, Lucas. Really here. Then I'm here. He took her hand, helped her navigate to her bedroom, and for the first time since the accident, Alyssa didn't feel self-conscious about the adaptations she'd had to make. Lucas saw all of it, the grab bars, the modified closet, the specialized equipment, and none of it changed the way he looked at her. They lay together in the dark, Lucas's arms around her, her head on his chest listening to the steady beat of his heart. And Alyssa felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years, completely safe, completely whole. I was thinking, Lucas said softly, maybe in the spring we could start looking for a house. Something accessible with enough room for all of us. A yard for the kids, an office for you, a Lego room for Ben that he'll actually have to share this time. That's a big step. I know, but Alyssa, I don't want to date you for 5 years and then decide to commit. I know what I want. I want us, all 4 of us, to be a family. Official, permanent, together. He paused. Unless that's too fast? Alyssa thought about it, about all the reasons she should slow down, should be cautious. But she was done being cautious, done letting fear dictate her choices. It's fast, she admitted, but it's also right. So yes, let's start looking in the spring. She felt Lucas's smile against her hair. Yeah? Yeah? Let's build a life together. A real one, with a house and a future and all the messy, beautiful chaos that comes with blending 2 families. I love you, Alyssa Monroe. I love you too, Lucas Carter. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, the promise ring on Alyssa's finger and the future stretching before them like an open road. Mark's first supervised visit happened 3 weeks later. Alyssa had prepared Emma as best she could, explaining that she'd be spending an afternoon with her biological father, that it was okay to be nervous, that Mommy would be right there waiting when it was over. Emma had taken it with the adaptability of children everywhere, more interested in whether she could bring her favorite stuffed animal than in the emotional complexity of reuniting with a parent who'd abandoned her. The visit took place at a family center with a supervisor present. Alyssa had to drop Emma off and leave for the 2-hour duration, and those 2 hours were the longest of her life. Lucas stayed with her, driving her to a nearby park where they walked and talked and tried not to obsess over what was happening. She's going to be fine, Lucas kept saying. The supervisor is there, Mark can't do anything inappropriate, and Emma knows you're coming back for her. I know, I just hate this. Hate that he gets access to her after everything he did. I know. But this is the price of winning. Supervised visitation is better than shared custody. And who knows, maybe Mark will prove to be a halfway decent father during these visits. Or maybe he'll get bored and stop showing up. Lucas squeezed her hand. Either way, Emma has you. She has us. That's what matters. When it was time to pick Emma up, Alyssa's hands were shaking, but Emma came out smiling, chattering about the games she and the man had played, the toys at the center, the cookies they'd had for snack. Did you have fun? Alyssa asked carefully. It was okay. He was nice. Emma climbed into her car seat, already moving on. Can we go home now? Ben is coming over and we're building a castle. Just like that, it was over. The first visit done, the precedent set. And Emma was fine. More than fine. She was resilient and adaptable and secure in her mother's love. Over the next months, Mark maintained his supervised visits with surprising consistency. Emma went once a month, came home each time unaffected, and gradually started referring to Mark as my other dad in the casual way kids accepted the adults in their lives. It wasn't the relationship Alyssa would have chosen for Emma, but it was manageable. And Mark, to his credit, seemed to be genuinely trying to make amends, even if he'd never be the father Emma deserved. Spring came, bringing with it warmer weather and new beginnings. True to their word, Lucas and Alyssa started house hunting, looking for something that could accommodate a wheelchair, hold 4 people comfortably, and feel like home for their blended family. They found it in late April, a 4-bedroom ranch with wide doorways, an accessible master suite, and a massive backyard where the kids could play. It needed work, but Lucas was handy, and Alyssa was determined, and they could see the potential. This is it, Alyssa said, standing in the empty living room and trying to imagine their furniture, their life, their future filling the space. You sure? Lucas asked. It's a lot of house. I'm sure. This is where we're supposed to be. They closed on the house in June, spent the summer renovating and moving in, blending their lives with the same care they'd blended their hearts. Emma and Ben each got their own room, but spent most nights having sleepovers in one or the other. The dining room became Ben's Lego workspace, with strict rules about cleaning up before dinner. The backyard became a paradise of swings and sandboxes, and the vegetable garden Alyssa had always wanted but never had space for. And through it all, Lucas and Alyssa learned the rhythms of their new life, how to parent together, how to resolve conflicts, how to make space for each other's quirks and needs. It wasn't always easy. There were disagreements about discipline and schedules, moments of frustration when the blending felt more like collision. But they worked through it, talked through it, loved through it. On a warm evening in late August, Lucas found Alyssa in the garden, harvesting tomatoes while Emma and Ben chased fireflies across the lawn. Hey, he said, kneeling beside her wheelchair. Can we talk? Alyssa's heart jumped. They'd been living together for 2 months, and while it had been mostly wonderful, there'd been some rough patches. Is everything okay? Everything's perfect. That's what I want to talk about. Lucas took her dirty, tomato-stained hands in his. Alyssa, I love this life we've built. I love waking up next to you, eating breakfast with our kids, coming home to you every night. I love the chaos and the mess and even the arguments about whose turn it is to make dinner. Lucas, let me finish. He smiled, nervous and excited. 8 months ago, I gave you a promise ring and said someday I'd ask you to marry me. Well, Alyssa Monroe, someday is today. You've survived holidays with your mother, multiple coffee emergencies, and that incident where Ben and Emma thought it would be fun to see if they could color the bathroom purple. You know exactly what you're signing up for, so I'm asking, will you marry me? He pulled out a ring, not the promise ring she still wore, but an engagement ring, simple and beautiful with a single diamond that caught the sunset light. Alyssa was crying, tomatoes forgotten, her whole heart expanding with joy. Yes, God, yes, Lucas, I'll marry you. Lucas slid the ring onto her finger beside the promise ring and kissed her thoroughly while their children cheered from across the yard. We're getting married, Ben shouted, racing over. Does this mean Emma is really my sister now? Yep, Lucas confirmed. Official siblings. Awesome! Ben grabbed Emma's hand. Come on, we need to build a celebration castle. The kids raced off, leaving Alyssa and Lucas alone in the garden, engaged and happy and so far from that terrible Christmas Eve that had started everything. I can't believe this is my life, Alyssa said softly. A year and a half ago, I thought I was broken beyond repair, unlovable, and now you know the truth, Lucas finished. You were never broken, just waiting for the right person to see you clearly. You see me clearly. I do, and I love everything I see. Lucas kissed her again, soft and sweet. We should probably set a date before your mother starts planning this wedding for us. God, you're right. She's going to be insufferable. Worth it, though. Definitely worth it. They got married 3 months later, on a crisp November afternoon, in the backyard of their home surrounded by family and friends. Emma was the flower girl, wearing a purple dress she'd picked out herself. Ben was the ring bearer, taking his responsibility so seriously that he barely blinked during the entire ceremony. Alyssa wore white and felt beautiful, felt whole, felt like the bride she'd never thought she'd get to be. And when Lucas looked at her as she rolled down their garden path aisle, the love in his eyes was so clear, so certain, that she finally believed what he'd been telling her all along. She was worthy. She was enough. She was loved. The reception was held in the same backyard, under string lights, and the same stars that had watched over them that first Christmas Eve. Alyssa danced in her wheelchair, Lucas spinning her in circles while their children laughed and their families cheered. And for the first time in 3 years, Alyssa didn't think about what she'd lost. She only thought about what she'd gained. Late in the evening, when the guests had gone home and the kids were finally asleep, Lucas and Alyssa sat together on their back porch, her hand in his, both wedding rings gleaming in the moonlight. Do you remember that night at the cafe? Alyssa asked. When Mark humiliated me and I was so sure my life was over? I remember thinking I'd never seen anyone handle cruelty with such grace, Lucas said. I remember knowing I had to do something, that I couldn't just sit there and watch. I'm glad you didn't. I'm glad you stood up for me. I'm glad you asked to sit with us. I'm glad you promised not to go anywhere and then kept that promise even when I pushed you away. Alyssa leaned her head on his shoulder. I'm glad for all of it, Lucas, even the hard parts, because they brought me here, to you, to this life. The worst night became the best night, Lucas said softly. Yeah, it really did. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars, feeling the cool November breeze, wrapped in the warmth of their love and the promise of all the tomorrows stretching before them. Somewhere inside the house, Emma called out in her sleep, and without discussion, both Lucas and Alyssa rose to check on her. They found her tangled in her purple blanket, Ben sprawled in the sleeping bag on her floor where he'd insisted on camping out because that's what siblings do. Both children were fine, just dreaming, safe, and loved in the home their parents had built. We did good, Lucas whispered, his arm around Alyssa's waist as they watched their kids up. We did, Alyssa agreed. We really did. And as they stood there in the doorway, Alyssa thought about all the versions of herself she'd been. The dancer, the abandoned girlfriend, the woman in the wheelchair convinced she was unlovable, the terrified mother fighting to keep her child. All of those women had led her here, to this moment, to this man, to this life she'd built from the ashes of her worst nightmare. The wheelchair hadn't defined her. The abandonment hadn't broken her. The fear hadn't won. She had won. She'd won because she'd kept showing up, kept fighting, kept believing that maybe, just maybe, she deserved something beautiful. And she'd been right. Christmas Eve came around again, marking 2 years since that fateful night. The family made it a tradition to return to the cafe every year, to sit in the same booth and order hot chocolate with extra marshmallows, and remember how far they'd come. This year, there were 4 of them around the table: Lucas and Alyssa, Ben and Emma, a family complete and whole. They laughed and told stories and made plans for the future, and when other diners looked at them, they didn't see a woman in a wheelchair. They saw a family. Happy. Together. Exactly where they belonged. "Mommy," Emma said, 8 years old now and wise beyond her years, "do you remember when you were sad all the time?" "I do, baby." "I'm glad you're not sad anymore. I like it better when you smile." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." Lucas's hand found Alyssa's under the table, squeezed gently, and she squeezed back. No words needed, just the silent communication of 2 people who'd found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from broken pieces. The past didn't define them anymore. The wheelchair was just a chair. The abandonment was just history. The fear was just a memory. All that mattered was this: the 4 of them around a table, hot chocolate cooling in their mugs, Christmas lights twinkling overhead, and a future full of possibilities stretching before them. Sometimes the worst night really does lead to the best life. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the person who kneels beside your wheelchair in a cafe becomes the person who stands beside you forever. Alyssa had been lucky, luckier than she'd ever imagined possible. And every single day, she chose to remember that.